We have the footage.
And greetings, everybody. Keith here, hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I want to remind everybody, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down below for anybody that wants to share some love. And, of course, the StreamYard link is there for anybody who wants to join the panel. We're going to do a review of a video I did a while back called Public Education, the Wrong Path. Basically what we're looking at is, I guess I shouldn't say that it's the wrong path. It is a wrong path if that's all you're going to use. That's for damn sure. But the public education system, I think, is what people have done in giving up their parenting and handed over the education of their children to foreigners. And if they're going to do that, I think that's okay, as long as there's a concurrent education going on at the home base that gives a oral tradition and shows a distinct difference between the domestic knowledge as opposed to any foreign knowledges. And the public education system, granted, it's teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic and things like that. And those are things that any parent should and could be able to be teaching their children. I think that's inherent part of that parenting process that helps bond with those children. And I think this is one of the greatest tragedies of doing such a thing, of giving up your responsibility of teaching your own little ones to someone else. So we're going to get into it. Again, I remind you the link is down there for anybody who wants to jump on panel, folks. And public education, the wrong path. Again, leading us into a comprehension of literal history written by foreigners as opposed to the oral histories passed down by our forefathers. Very distinctly different knowledges, and by bypassing that oral history and only using the literal written history is a big detriment to being able to progress in our own individual environments, I think. Good afternoon, everybody. Keith here. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Coming on today, hoping I can catch some people and try to wake them up. You know, I've been talking about the Postal Service for a while now, and how everything works in regards to the imports and exports and stuff, and routing, and whether it's public routing, and how many people have their hands in the till in that route along the way, and trying to establish just a plain end-to-end routing for ourselves so that those hands, third-party hands, don't get involved. Yeah. And because it's all postal roads and routes, that's what we need to deal with. So I've got a little bit of private education based on the information in the public domain that we really need to start learning ourselves so we can express how we educate our own children without the interference of government, period. See, they have no power to educate your children unless you give them that power. So we're going to go over something today. We're going to go over what they know as the General Education Provisions Act. General Education Provisions Act. Now, I don't know who's watching, but I've only got 2 viewers, so please share the video. And this is going to be a long one today, guys. This is going to be a couple hours at least, because I'm going to go through this General Education Provisions Act and explain to you how it's all military, because they're using military terms. And because it's done through the customs laws, we know that military is customary. See, everybody wants to run to the different codes of their nations to find out the laws. And I keep trying to tell everybody, you really need to go back to the scripture. because the scripture will tell you everything that's going on.
Or your oral histories. As I said earlier, we have we're on this land that I live on. It's supposedly a native land to other peoples than my own lineage. And so those people would, of course, go to their oral histories, and that's what we're talking about. Everybody at one point in time had a oral history, and it was a passing down of certain knowledges from their forefathers. And I think that kind of stuff needs to continue, because the literal history that we're being taught shows that we are being changed by those very thoughts and the words that construct our societies. So we are being molded by society rather than molding society to our needs.
It tells us we're not supposed to be reading and writing. That's not our job. We're supposed to be listening to the word of God. We're supposed to be observing how it operates in Mother Earth, Mother Nature. That's our true lesson guide as we go forth as living souls in Mother Nature. And everybody wants to be involved in the person and write a story, and they're not the ones holding the damn pen. And when you do, when you are holding your pen, you're putting the information in somebody else's records instead of your own. So we're going to talk a little bit about the public education as a general education provided by military, because that's in effect what it is. So you have a provisional government in this country.
Greetings, Russ. How you doing tonight, brother?
Greetings. Figure I'd come out and hang out. I've seen this one, but never hurts to see it twice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate it. And again, make sure you stop me and interrupt me so I can pause it anytime you need.
You have a record, you can keep it. But that's on an individual basis. The people that run this government are running it provisionally under military enforcement of the law of nations and the Treaty of Berne, which is indentured through the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, that allows this nation to provide a Congress and a Constitution for that Congress. Again, it all extends from the Universal Postal Union and the
Like I said, we really don't have a government ourselves. The government we have is a corporatocracy where the offices are filled by people willing to get paid to do that, as opposed to nationals that would automatically just fill those offices as a matter of being retired and now putting forth their public service to their communities. And again, this is why I urge that we quit hiring these young police officers and have that position held for somebody that certainly already had training in the military forces or something that would be able to show a little bit better discretion. I mean, it's certainly an area that needs much better discretion than what we have, including, like I'm pointing out here, the public education system. The parents need more discretion in sending your children to these public educational centers and then just letting it fly. If you're going to use that system, please, I urge you to counteract it with your own oral traditions and your own domestic cultural enhancements so that they know the distinct difference.
Postal Congress. Okay? And we're going to see that in this General Education Provisions Act, both the customs and the military codes. Okay? It's going to start out with the employment code. It's going to go to the tax code. And then it's going to go to the customs codes. And they're going to have all kinds of codes in between, and then it's going to show you a bunch of military codes. One of them being the Trading with the Enemies Act. It mentions Trading with the Enemies Act in the General Provisions Act for a reason.
And this, again, is because of that, a part of this is that national address format saying that you're a trustee, and that as a trustee, you are already qualified, and therefore you are not an enemy of the state. And it's a very large presumption of having a knowledge base. And again, it goes to the aspect, if you want a healthy nation, then that nation should be a intelligent nation and not one that has an average reading comprehension of 7th or 8th grade.
Because they're training you to fill out their military script for trading with the Allies. Now, in trading with the allies, they want to make sure that you're not having private communications with enemies. So while you've been indoctrinated into believing in this public education system, that's what they're doing, is they're training you to be public. They're training you to perform the functions of public officers in uniform. That's what the public office is all about.
You pause.
Oops. I forgot I wasn't on. I had my volume off. This goes back to a video I did a while back. I've got a book, The Courts and the Public Schools. It's what I've been saying. This permeates everything in your life. This corporatocracy and the way this government is run as a military fascist system is permeating every part of your life, and you're allowing it by taking upon the very conveniences it offers. And that's part of the indoctrination. It's part of the laziness. It's part of the easiness of being able to just give up responsibilities because you want your life to be easy. If that's really what you want, then you enslave yourself.
Okay, so let's take a look at this. Yes, Holly, that's what I'm getting at. We should be teaching our own children the spirituality of being a living soul. And we see here is his TOPN. Oh God, what is that? Popular name. It stands for something popular name. I can't remember. But they go on, and every one of these acts that you see under this, it'll start out with this, and then it'll tell you what's in a popular name. Popular name. Public. It's popular. It's a big popularity contest. Okay. General Education Provisions Act. Under General Education Provisions Act, which is Public Law 90-247, Title 6, January 2nd, 1968, 81 Stat 814, and you can locate it at 20 USC 1221. And when you look at
and remember, 20 U.S. Code and 20 CFR, those are employee benefits. So just like we discussed in the selective service video, it's a benefit beyond the age of 14, particularly for young males, to take upon that higher education of high school and medical benefits that mom and dad generally force them to do. And it's very hard for a young man to say, okay, I want to quit school. But then mom and dad enforce that if you don't, you're going to have to get out and live on your own. So they end up going to school under threat, duress, and coercion, and the ignorance that mom and dad don't understand that that's a military occupation now. See, that's a military school, moms and dads, just like it's a military hospital. Everything is run by the military, and that's why it says General Education Provisions Act. It's being provided by the military for the general public. That's what they call the public that is not part of the military. They call them civilians. And that too is a misnomer. As a civilian, you're part of the military occupation. You're either a voluntary prisoner that stayed behind with the other prisoners, your friends and brothers and sisters and neighbors, so that you could partake in keeping them in good health and this and that. And so you get paid by the occupiers to do so. And that's why they call it an occupation.
it's a short title, applicability, definitions, and Title 20 is employee benefits. Okay. And so one of the employee benefits is a General Education Provision Act, so that you can send your children to one of their military schools. Like I said, the hospitals are military. The schools are military. All these public institutions are military offices. They are needful places and buildings under Congress, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, 3, 14, and 17. Congress shall lay and collect taxes, duties, and imposts. Posts, as in post stations, post offices.
And I forgot clause 7 there, postal roads that connect all of those needful places and buildings for those 14th Amendment citizens doing 14th Amendment commercial activities laid out and constructed by Congress.
Places where you post articles, whether they be public or private. Except as otherwise provided, this chapter applies to each applicable program of the Department of Education. So if the military wants to educate you, they have to educate you on all of their programs, because that's what applies. They have to educate you about the tax. They have to educate you about the employment. They have to educate you about the banking. And this is what they're failing. They put it in here in the public domain, but they don't say a word about it in the public education that you send your children to. They teach you about reading, writing, and arithmetic so you can follow up your education in all of the rest of the public domains and figure out what you've been doing all your life while you've been posting all these things to everybody else's record. Okay? We can go to 20 U.S.C. 1221A, but it says see short title. When you hit the link, it says nothing found. And that's because under 20 U.S.C. 1221, according to the grammar, that parentheses means A within this. So we have to go to 1221, and it says Education Provisions Act. That's all it is. It's just telling you that's the name of this. This is the short title for it. And again, like I said, it's status United States Code. Status United States Code authorizes title, and it says Title 26 right off the bat. So we're already into the tax code.
No sound.
Thank you. And so remember, moms and dads, when you register your children at that public education center and they're following the laws of the United States Code or state statutes, it's showing that you're now involved in a contract. And you just contracted out not just your rights, but the rights, titles, and interests of your children to a military faction. Again, if you know what you're doing and you can protect them in that, then feel free. But be sure that you make sure to also give the opposing dynamic at home of your oral histories to distinguish what they're teaching in the public schools with what is actually true.
Okay? Cross references. Folks, if you're not involved in the military and you sign your children up for that public education, you are exporting your data elements into their record and using cross references, because that is not a direct reference to your spirituality. You've been joined in a military force without knowing it. Just like I said, when you go to the hospital and you register for hospital birth.
Hey, hang out for the emergency. Right there.
So when you sign up for registration at the hospital to give birth, that's exactly what you're doing. You're giving birth. You're not going into labor. You're not in labor. You're not doing the good works of God. You register under a spell of illness for inpatient hospital treatments for a birth registration afterwards. Okay? Same thing with the public education system. You're doing the same damn thing. You're entering into a tax venue for an employee as an employee benefit. Now you notice over here it says 19 CFR. 19 CFR is the customs code. Customs. It's not the postal service. It's a customs code. It's customary to tax people because they don't have the education. They don't have the sense to educate themselves in the spirituality. They have to educate themselves in the military form, and therefore they have to fill out military documentation, and that means the military has to do work for them. And for the customary work of military officers doing work for you, you have to file for taxes. Okay, let's look under here, this section here. You notice it's boxed off. So let's look at this section here. Customs warehouses. You know, every time you enter a document, it goes into a drawer, a file drawer, in a bureau. And it's based on the original Bureau of Vital.
Statistics.
Greetings,
Statist,
sister.
I see. Statist. You make yourself the police state by wanting them to police you, by entering in documents that have cross references, and you never fix the cross references. Okay? Look at the next one. Cartage. Cartage. Are you of the age to carry something in a cart? Cartage and a lighterage of merchandise. You have to carry something in that cart. When you go to the store, that's a cartage. You're performing the functions of public office by going to a public facility that keeps public military receipts and using a military financial system. The next one, cartage, express consignments. If you're going to be signing things, you have to have your intent, what you mean, your mentality about it. Because
This goes, again, sorry, this goes to that 149.3 data elements. Whereas if you've got the ability in those contract clauses that we see in that data elements section, says buyer, seller, or shipped party can use a widely recognized, commercially identifiable number in lieu of the name and address, then why would you need to sign anything exposing the name? That's part of the principle of using the number in lieu of the name and address, is to prevent anybody from knowing the name. So if you can use that number, then why do you need to sign? See, this is a consignment situation where they need you to sign because they can't sell anything without having something. They don't have assets, so they need the private assets in order to do all that stuff.
as you're signing on with somebody else, and you better express the trust in doing so. If you don't express that trust, then you're not clarifying the cross reference. And
they'll treat you as a trustee because you signed and didn't qualify anything. But again, that's because nobody was ever taught. They didn't teach us anything about trust law or contracts in school. Oh no, you got to go to college and get a higher education for that. Well, by then you're already indoctrinated into being a United States citizen. See what I'm saying? Not knowing and having to go get a job even though you're a United States business. Why would you need to go get a job if you are a United States business?
this is a problem in their military schools, because when you express the spiritual trust, they cannot accept. They cannot teach religion in schools. There is a separation of church and state. So when you
And again, I'm not the one saying that you are a United States citizen. I'm the one saying that if that's what's taught, that's what we're indoctrinated to believe, and that United States citizen is a business, then it shows an inconsistency on that front of why would you need a job? If you're a United States business, then what is that business? That's why I do this research and find all these inconsistencies that says, wait a minute, I don't care if that's what you presume or not, but that's what the record reflects as I'm supposed to be qualified as, and I'm not. It's in plain writing. It says a United States business means a United States citizen. Therefore, a United States citizen means a United States business. How am I a business on the day I am born?
Sign your children up for school and they don't teach religion in the school, you are signing them up as the state entity. Warehouse and re-warehouse entries and withdrawals. You are allowing cross references without expressing the differences to be entered with no handwritten statement of your intent. And therefore there is no proper entry into the record and everything remains presumed. You're operating under the presumption that they put on the record and assuming that it applies to you and entering things without proper references.
When moms and dads fill out that birth certificate thing, does anybody in those places, does anyone explain to them that what's happening is the creation of a trust in the translation of a given name and family name to a legal name as the entitlement of that trust, so that throughout the lifetime, if anything needs to be taken care of by the state will step in and do so for the welfare of the mother and the child, and that trust is the establishment of a burial trust in case something goes wrong and that child dies, and the state will already have a place for him to be buried. Because the record doesn't even reflect a daddy there, most often. Poor mom. Dad left her, and here she is. She's got a child. We better help her. We better let her know that we'll help take care of that child on her behalf, so long as she signs her signature.
Okay. So then that's this square. Now, when we look at this one, bonded warehouses, everyone that you give data elements to, and they're entering those data elements into a file, in a drawer, in a dresser, in that building, however, they are bonded for that record keeping. And that's the tax principle. You have levied a workload on the military forces by entering paperwork. Now they have to return paperwork, and they have to do it efficiently according to the Paperwork Reduction Act.
And that's the warehousing. Warehousing is an act. It's an action. It's a verb. A bonded warehouse as a noun shows you where the warehousing occurs. And like I said, it doesn't matter if it's a library, that's a bonded warehouse. It's warehousing books. Same thing as any government office is warehousing the paperwork.
Greetings, brother. How are you?
Good. Yourself?
All is well. So that would mean any of these corporations, like these communication centers or any place that import information such as data elements, they're all bonded and are they are storing data elements within a bureau somewhere.
Yes. That's as simple as it gets. It's a matter of the actions, and like I said, the words, terms, and conditions everybody's using, they think they mean a certain thing when they are so synonymous throughout the codes and everything. And again, it goes to that the law is construed to be uniform throughout all the jurisdictions. Well, the way it's uniform is that they use like language. That's all it is. They're saying the same thing over and over and over again in using different words. That's all.
So basically, Keith, all of these organization, companies, corporations, businesses, they're all depositories and they're depositing data elements on a book that carries a T ledger somewhere.
Yep, they have to. Even if they're a nonprofit organization, they have to carry a ledger. Everybody believes they're subject to the government, so they're carrying those ledgers. Did anybody even teach you how to do that in school? Likely not.
That's environmental protection and conservation. And so by you going across borders from your religious or spiritual state into a military state, you have to be bonded. You have to show that you are capable of efficiently processing paperwork and not violating the Paperwork Reduction Act by filing frivolous fucking bullshit. So we see the next one, and it references the same stuff. So why they duplicated it here, I don't know. I don't care. It's all the same stuff. This one here, we get into a couple different ones, though. Marking of imported articles and containers.
Marking of imported articles. That's that first import. The very first import. And I guarantee you that when it comes to that record keeping, they don't keep a record on you at the state level only. They have to keep a record on you at the United States level, because that's the intent and purpose. You can't just hand it over to somebody else and say, here, keep my records. No, when they hand over records, it's got to be a duplicating system. So they maintain a record and the state maintains a record. This is the same thing the bank tells you when you have open an account with them. They tell you, now make sure you keep your records. Here's a book to keep records. They give you a ledger.
Okay, so mom and dad, when you've been indoctrinated into the public education system to write things down by marking them in a certain way, you have exported that data element and they are imported articles and they are put into a container, a drawer, a file, a bureau, a desktop, something. Okay, you're the one doing the marking. Mom, you did the marking at the hospital. That was the maternity ward that marked down elements that allowed the presumption to ride for paternity. Paternity is false. Maternal, material. Ma, you are supposed to honor your mother first. You are supposed to honor your mother first. You are supposed to honor your mother first. 3 times you are to honor your mother first before you honor your father. And in recognizing the correct mother, you are paying honor to the one Father which art in heaven. Our actions speak louder than words while we are in earth, in the terrestrial plane of maternal.
Greetings, John. How you doing tonight, brother?
Good, Keith. How you doing?
I am well. I am well. And what do you think so far?
Just hopped in about 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is negative accounting, the way I see it, right? So that matches our legal system, which is negative law. See, so what they're doing is it's the same thing, just in different flavors. You know,
Yep.
they're not showing credits. They're not providing any contract. There's no, just nothing's done right in their world. Nothing.
Yeah, and it is frustrating. And believe you me, I do the best I can, but I end up getting on the phone and yelling like I did today. It's frustrating, even trying to present it, because these people just automatically go into fear mode. oh, I'm talking to a sovereign citizen. No, you're not. You're talking to somebody that actually happens to know a little bit more than you. That's it.
Yeah, because they think that we're just another administrative entity, Keith.
Yep.
That's the problem. Everything's administrative, so they're blind. We can't see.
Material, different. Material is a cross reference of the maternity, where one was born, how one was born, and when that process started. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee.
And that's that general journal I was talking about with the prenatal doctor. Mom finds out she might be pregnant, so she goes to the doctor and then starts telling the doctor everything about her own private life. Big mistake.
And as soon as mom finds out she's pregnant, she starts entering a paternal record. Prenatal. In relations to her own paternity and patriotism under the United States citizen as a resident,
in computer class, I
operating
learned
as a
about
transmitting
batch processing or continuous feed machines. That's what this whole thing is. See, the data goes in. It's like a batch processing when we're born, right? But then it's continuous feed later in life with the SSN. So you got both kinds of computer systems fulfilled with this system.
Yeah, that's what the blockchaining is. It's a continuous feed. Like I said, you've got timestamps, and it's literally going to timestamp how many seconds in between each keystroke. So if I write a sentence and do a search, and then I do a bunch of other stuff, and then they come back later on that day, it's gonna my computer will log how many seconds lapsed between the last key entry and the time I touch it again. That's how astute this AI system is. It's every second is accounted for.
Right.
utility in a foreign trade zone. That hospital is a foreign trade zone. Okay. The next one. Oops. Country of origin marking. See if you're.
This is the problem I have. Country of origin marking is the nationality that's conferred upon us, known as a United States citizenship that is known as a business. And not once does anybody teach us that at any point, anywhere along any public education system, including college. Not that I know of. Otherwise, I think that one little point, if people would just learn how to learn that aspect and teach that alone, would have people seriously asking questions about the rest of everything.
Claiming that U.S. citizen, you're putting a mark down for that as a country of origin. And that's false. You do not have a country.
Yeah, there's no country named the United States. They do have a thing called the United States of America when it comes to the UN and stuff. But even under that, understand this, people, even under that, each of the states is their own nationality. Still to this day.
Yeah, they got their own State Department, their own Constitution. It's right in front of us.
Now, Keith, wouldn't they have to teach not only what you suggested, wouldn't they also have to teach the accounting in a way that people can understand about the T ledger?
Absolutely.
Because one would be a plus and one would be a minus, so it'd be a negative and a positive.
Absolutely. That's what I was saying about if you want a healthy nation, you got to have an intelligent nation. That means you have to do a much better job at teaching them than what we have done since the onset of the public education system. This entire education system to this date has failed its purpose in actually teaching anybody. And again, it may be up for opinion or discussion as to whether that purpose was really to educate or not. But I guarantee you, nobody goes into the teaching profession thinking that they're going to screw their students, right? I don't
Right.
know a single teacher that didn't take up the teaching profession thinking they were going to go in there and help these children learn and do a damn fucking good job of it.
Right.
But
It's the system, Keith.
right, but because they weren't provided with what is necessary, because they too were indoctrinated, then it doesn't get taught.
Well, is it really teaching? Because if it's based on a curriculum, right, then
Well,
the
that's what I'm
information.
talking about.
Okay.
Its intent might be to teach, and the teachers might have an intent to teach, but the actual program that's used does not teach. The only thing it teaches is to remember. It doesn't teach anybody to use a critical thought process, and that's what's missing.
Well, it appears programming, not just teaching. I
Right.
yield.
Yep.
You know, I just thought of something that seems awful. I mean, if you really take heed in what's being said here, and basically your school system in the hands of the wrong people could be considered some sort of satanic cult or something, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. I mean, what are we looking at today,
I
folks?
mean, I'm just trying to think reason and logic here and open for the conversation. Obviously, you know, Keith.
Well, yeah, but we've got teachers today that are sitting there teaching the transgender stuff. That is not curriculum.
I mean,
Okay?
that was a big eye opener for me right there. I mean, that's what I got out of that. Was basically these people that we send our children to on a day to day basis, and this is everybody.
Yeah.
They're, I mean, they're being taught by these people that don't have our best interests at heart.
Not at all. I'll agree with that.
Sounds like spell casting to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like a huge issue, and a lot of people I don't think seem to comprehend how big of an issue this really is.
Yeah, and that's why I can't stress it enough. I am not in this to be a leader, a guru, or anything. I'm in this to defeat what has been used against me, and that is the knowledge. And the only way I can defeat that is to understand that every breath I take is an opportunity to learn something. And if that's truly the best opportunity I can use or use it for, as I've said many times, my firm belief is the true benefit is the knowledge. Then why would I not do that? So again, this public education system and me trying to blame it for my own faults is not any good. So it's not necessarily the system. Again, people, is our willingness to sit back and take upon its convenience. If we don't do that, it can't have that effect.
Of origin. You have a time of origin. In beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. That is your origin. Your origin is with God.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God. And before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. Before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Again, confirming or reaffirming and concurring with the idea that you don't need a country of origin. You already have the word of origin. Does it exist in your heart? If so, that's all you need to play.
You know what's
Before I
interesting
formed thee in the
too?
belly,
I just did what we were talking about a minute ago. Something come with a common core. I looked up the word core, and basic meaning is a central portion cut and removed.
Yeah, and the sense in that is that it's distinct in difference, not necessarily that it is cut and removed, but it can be, and that's because it is so distinctive and separate. And therefore we have
also,
an organ in our body that works 24/7, and it's literally just a muscle.
it says hard or inmost part of anything.
Yep. And that's the core, and that's why I talk about correct. What do you think that means when you stand erect? Straight. You stand straight up. So correctness is straight from the heart.
Before I knew thee, before I formed thee in the belly, before thou was cast from the womb, I sanctified thee. I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations, countries, states, foreign trade zones, municipalities. You are a prophet unto those entities. That's what you should mark everything with. Just like a dog going around and pissing on his territory, you should be pissing on these motherfuckers. Liquidation of duties, not liquid.
You guys catch that? Does that sound like a bankruptcy term? Liquidation? Does that sound like a financial commercial term? Liquidity and liquidation?
Most definitely.
So why would they use that term here in the customs codes for liquidation of duties? Is this the Wicked Witch of the East? Oh no, I'm melting, melting, melting. Have you been bamboozled? What is liquidation? I'd love to see somebody ask that in a bankruptcy proceeding. What is liquidation of duties? I mean, are these custom proceedings that we're going through here?
Liquidation of assets, but liquidation of duties. If you remember the Wicked Witch in the Wizard of Oz, she could no longer fulfill her wickedness because she was liquidated. It got rid of the material of her existence. The next one, again, they duplicated. The next one, 1307. Convict made goods. Importation prohibited. Let's talk about them license plates that all them trustees with the victory. The victor. They are a co-trustee with the victor, but the victor is the warden as the other co-trustee, and he's telling them what to do. You're going to make plates for us, so we can travel around under the auspice of having a contract with the Postal Congress.
And that was a subcontract that judge sentenced you to. And the warden is the contractor. And every last one of those inmates is a subcontractor. And they're just in a different capacity of subcontracting than the guards. They're all contracting, every last one of them. Some know those contracts, others don't.
Importation prohibited. You cannot import plates made from Florida into Iowa. Iowa has to make its own plates. And they have to have somebody in a cross-reference that is with the victor to make those goods. A convict is in agreement to make those goods. All goods, wares. That prison is a warehouse making goods. By convict labor. And or forced labor and indentured labor.
Remember what I said about forced labor, right? I mean, we are talking about 18 U.S.C. 1589, wherein they talk about the term abuse or threatened abuse of law or legal process means the use or threatened use of a law or legal process, whether administrative, civil, or criminal, in any manner or for any purpose for which the law was not designed, in order to exert pressure on another person to cause that person to take some action or refrain from some action. They're not even supposed to be communicating with us. They are not even supposed to be communicating with us.
Under penal sanctions, military sanctions. And remember, we spoke about Book of Enoch, chapter 69, verses 8 through 11, where we're not supposed to be using a pen, according to the watcher, Penemu, who then speaks of Peniel and Peniel, all very close to penal and pineal gland.
You guys understand that? See, when they're talking about penalties, that's a military code. That means it's a military administration. It means it's a military government. It's a military executive office. It's a military legislative branch. It's a military judicial branch. It's all military people. Every last bit. It's an extension from the international level all the way down from Her Majesty's Royal Navy.
Or it's an insurance system run by the military.
Correct. Yes, I've said from day one it's an insurance scheme, because everything is required to have insurances, and then of course everything is also required to be taxed first upon an assessment.
Before you write anything down in a pen, refer to the pineal gland, the import-export center of spirituality, the Christ dome. 19 CFR 12, special classes of merchandise. Because you are special. Special meaning private. The next one, user fee for customs services. See, you have to pay for your child's education in that public education system, and it's supposed to be so you can pay all the administrators. And that's a user fee for the custom services of those administrators at certain small airports, whether you speak it verbally or orally through your oral commands, and other facilities. Face, eye, lights. Because you can't see a face in the dark.
See how they use those same terms that we've been discussing? I'm telling you, folks, these terms are specific. And I urge you again, unlearn what you've learned and relearn concise English. And then get back to the roots of what they've all been using against you.
Customs, financial, and accounting procedure. Collection of customs duties. Everyone that collects a document and you want a copy, they're going to charge you because they have to pay the duties because they haven't been liquidated. That's why it's first. Collection of customs duties. Taxes, fees, interest, and other charges. They have to collect the customs duties first. The duty is the actual certification of a United States citizen with a qualified statement. That qualified statement in foreign trade zones is a contract or an oath of office, one or the other. No other way around it. None.
This is in relation to that Real ID Act. You look up the Real ID Act, and it's specifically applicable, like I say, 5 U.S.C. 301 says applicable to Department of Defense. The Real ID Act is applicable to federal employees and contractors. So that's one of those cage code entities where you have a registration with the government as a government contractor through the system. Otherwise, everything else still remains a presumption, and you are lying because you're the one saying it, not them.
General provisions. Aye, aye, General. It's a military provision. We do not have a republic form of government because we didn't keep it. The republic form of government is done through the postal service and not a fucking provisional military that doesn't understand how the postal service works.
See, if you have a true standing government and a valid postal service, the postal service is your judicial office. Again, they're the ones that run the contracts around the world. So under that judicial discretion, you would have an internal postal service that would have the judicial discretion to determine whether that is a contract party or a benefactor to the trust. As a true sitting government truly knows its own peoples and doesn't sit there and ignore them and say, nah, you're just like me. You got to have an ID too. No, I don't. And neither do you. And just because that's what you believe in your ignorance doesn't mean that 98 people are going to jump off the bridge and I'm going to go running after them. I'm going to let those 98 people jump off the bridge. I'm going to let the fools be fools. But that doesn't mean that those fools can sit there and point the finger at me and say, I'm a fool too. That ain't going to work anymore. I've been the bitch ass slave all my life. I have been that fucking fool. There comes a point in time in your life where you have to realize the truth and stand up and pull up your own big boy panties.
Okay? I urge people to understand every article you post in every venue, you better know what you're doing. Otherwise, they are going to grab it and charge you for it. If you're entering it into a commercial environment, it is a charging instrument. Period. Air commerce regulations, everything you say. Now, guarantee they're not going to talk about that in here, but I want you to understand that concept. Everything you say, actions speak louder than words. Shut the fuck up. Start learning this shit first before you start speaking. And in the meantime, only do what is in your heart. The next one is bonds and other security. This reads almost like obligations and other securities of the United States, doesn't it? This one here, however, says bonds and other security. Now, if the United States, under 18 U.S.C. 8, is responsible and obligated, obligations and other securities of the United States includes all bonds.
Includes all bonds is the first three words. So that alone shows that there is definitely some kind of bond, and it's only reasonable that there would be some kind of bond between the United States and the post office or the customs service here. What is that bond?
In any case in which bond or other security is not specifically required by law, the Secretary of the Treasury may by regulation or specific instructions require or authorize customs officers to require such bonds or other security as he or they may deem necessary for the protection of the revenue or to assure compliance with any provision of law, regulation, or instruction which the Secretary of Treasury or the Customs Service may be authorized to enforce. I assure.
And notice that one word in there, and the revenue. So whose revenue is it?
People, they have no authorization to enforce any bond unless they get that congressional authority to do so from the Postal Congress.
See what I'm talking about?
May I?
You may.
I was looking up the term liquidation of duties, and then it came up still under Title 19 for customs, section 159.4, and it was talking about alcoholic beverages. And then for some reason, I thought about Catholic because that's what I used to call Catholic as a child. And it says quantity subject to duties, and it has to do with internal revenue taxes on alcoholic beverages, and it's basically dealing with spirits. Am I correct?
Yeah. Were you born in a spell of illness? Did that disrupt your spirits?
It could not only disrupt your spirits, but it also can disrupt your soul if you're not careful.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that's, again, this isn't legal advice, folks. This is just my research, and I see things and I say things that might sound stupid. They might sound smart. I don't really care. I'm doing it, and if you like it, follow along. If you don't, that's fine, because it's not about me. It's about the message. If you like the message, then I hope it gets good for you.
Well, in the church, beloved brother, they talk about the wine and they talk about the bread. But when you talk about alcoholic, don't they consider wine some type of an alcoholic beverage? But it's offered in the church that you take the wine, which is equating to the blood of the Most High, and then the bread equating to the flesh. So, again, spell of illness, it sounds like witchcraft to me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So by inadvertently just automatically entering into their accounting system, they are going to require you to have a bond. That bond is a birth certificate, the birth registration, where they assign a social security number to a newborn child in an agreement at the state level with the Department of Defense. It is all military. It is a military fidelity bond with the Postal Union. The International Postal Union has a bond with a entity known as the United States of America under that indenture of the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union to enforce the law of nations, while using the Treaty of Berne as the ultimate naval treaty to protect all literary and artistic works.
And I misstated that there. I didn't. It's not used as the ultimate naval treaty. It's used with the ultimate naval treaty to help enforce its protections of the literary and artistic works, of course, which would be those international treaties and contracts.
Vessels in foreign domestic trades. Foreign.
Remember that trade shows 18 U.S.C. 7, Special Maritime Territorial Jurisdiction for 18 U.S.C. 8, Obligations and Other Securities of the United States for Article or 18 U.S.C. 9, Vessels of the United States, which is the conference of a nationality upon a newborn when they're born through the enumeration, and that is a United States vessel, and they're not qualified to even touch it yet. Yet it's constructed 18 years before they even think about making a decision on it, and then are never taught about that decision because it's assumed, presumed, and implied that otherwise they're just going to do it. Where I urge you again that 98% of the people paying these taxes voluntarily, if they were brought up in their spiritual nature and their talents and knew that there were many other things out there in this world to do other than become a slave to a United States corporate entity, then they would do so. And the record would reflect much more differently. We would have a good population of healthy, intelligent people, and would be able to have a sizable enough government to take care of the benefits that are required upon the people for those that aren't capable of governing themselves. In other words, it would be much more restricted. It would be much more limited. But because people give up that responsibility for the convenience of being one of those slaves, we now have a population of nothing but slaves.
And domestic trades. As soon as you start writing shit down, it becomes a vessel. It becomes a vessel of intangible thoughts that can now be relayed to somebody else if they're observed. It is a vessel.
Full of vehicular language. Remember the lingua franca? That's a vehicular language. That's the vehicle, is the language. And you are a driver if you use it for commercial purposes.
Vessel. Under that vassalage, you have to use your own customs relations with the insular possessions in Guantanamo Bay Naval Station. This is why they take all the international terrorists and people that are committing treason, sedition, and wire fraud and cybersecurity terroristic threats to Guantanamo Bay. They are in the international forum, and they cannot import goods under the normal prison system. It's a private prison industry, and they have to take it to the international public venue. And that is Guantanamo Bay Naval Station, adhering strictly to the Treaty of Berne and the enforcement of the law of nations. Articles conditionally free, subject to a reduced rate, etc. Telling you, they already provide in the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union, Article 1, the thing that indentures both the law of nations and the Treaty of Berne. Freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. Yet we have private industries, private prison industries producing license plates. And everybody believes that they have to have that license plate. And without knowledge that in order to put a license plate on your, quote, motor vehicle, you have to make a handwritten statement of your intent upon registering that automobile for use, at least 50% of its use for trade or business, which is defined as the performance of the functions of public office. And therefore, you must have an oath of office to make that declaration of intent. Otherwise, it is already under the prior conditions existing free. Period.
So Keith, with
Special
the
classes and merchandise. What'd I do?
with the it sounds like the Customs Border Patrol would be the warehousing depository unit for these data elements and that is being collected. Because then
For
the
those, for
entries.
those, for those coming across the border, yeah. But it's the international or the it's the National Vital Statistics Bureau that is relative to what we're talking about here. You're just talking about the immigrants. When it comes to the actual record that's being imported through the enumeration at birth, then that's the Bureau of Vital Statistics, both state and federal levels. Does that help you out? That's that. The border stations are just the ones that are keeping track of those coming across that border.
But then wouldn't it seem they're also keeping records and documentary records would be kept for importing and exporting all information, whether you're coming across the border or whether you're using it in vital statistics? That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if my thinking is, working
Yeah,
the way it's supposed to.
yeah. We're just talking about the enumeration at birth and how we become part of that system. When it comes to the imports and exports, that's going to be, like I said, even with your automobile industry, how can they call Ford an import through the United States if Ford never actually imports directly through the United States? I mean, do all those automobiles go into the United States there in Washington, D.C., and then get shipped out from there? That's not truly the import that we're talking about. We're talking about the record and how those data elements get transferred from point A to point B within that record system. And that's not on the roadways. That's in the electronic transfer system. It's a credit system.
Right. Well, you know how they have these large computers, Keith, that stores information and they have them in certain locations where these information may be stored. And that's why I'm thinking as far as entries being and recorded, that's where I'm thinking it could be a mainframe computer stored through the the CBP, and that's how I'm thinking it. Electronic data elements being stored, or imports and stuff being posted. That's
Yep.
how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, it's the electronic record. And like I said, again, that car doesn't go through the United States. The paperwork does. And it's just an electronic transfer.
There we go. That bond, transportation in bond. When you enter those data elements, you are entering for immediate delivery into transportation.
Transportation in bond and merchandise in transit. What is in transit? In transition from point A to point B. Freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. What is the territory of the Union? It's the electronic system.
Transportation in bond form. You keep signing everything. The signature is that of a U.S. citizen, known as a local resident, operating as a transmitting utility. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're not qualified. Customs warehouses, container stations, and control of merchandise therein. Once you hand it over, they have control. You no longer have control. Period. Very simple statements, folks. Certain importations temporarily free of duty. There are certain ones that are temporarily free of duty. Well, if they're temporarily free of duty, why? Because there's a process that has to be gone through in order to qualify for proper entry. And yet, if you use that process, it's an extended process that could take up to a year. If you're ready to go, that would be interference with commerce, interference with international trade. You are free to trade with whoever you want, but in making a declaration in order to trade under the auspices of custom codes of the United States, there's an entry process. And if you want to enter in through using the United States as a co-partner, a convict, then feel free to do so. Otherwise, all you have to do is express your cross-references. You can't apply for an oath of office under those auspices because you're not organized in that fashion. You're not organized to be conducting trade agreements with other people. You're just making simple exchanges, not requiring a trustee. A trust shall not fail for want of trustee. General provisions. Again, there's that general provisions. We go to 112. Carriers, cartmen, and lightermen. Carriers. You're a common carrier. If you're carrying that information, you give it to them. That's what they're looking for. That's what they want. That's a goods. That's a service. You provided the service of transferring data elements on a piece of paper.
And you're stating that you're some sort of transfer agent by holding that ID in your pocket. Again, that's got the state's name on the top, and then your name. And I guess any one of you can pull your license out or ID. And it's going to have the last name first, and then a comma, and then your first name and middle name. And surprisingly enough, it's going to be in all caps. I want to ask everybody, did anybody in this public education system ever teach you to write your name in that manner?
Nope.
Not at all.
But what I'm thinking, Keith, as you're saying, all these businesses, companies, and organizations, if you take a look at them, they're all titles. All of them are in all caps and they're all titles. So basically, when you call any of them, whether you're dealing with a phone company or any of them, it's always a one-sided conversation. And then in a one-sided conversation, they are always wanting to extract information from the party or the man or the woman on the other side of the phone. And then when you inquire about certain information you are expecting them to give back to you, they always say, I'm not qualified to give you. So who the hell is qualified to give what?
Exactly.
I mean, if you're telling me I myself have to give you my personal information, but when I inquire, about you, your company, your business, you're not qualified to give me. Why the fuck? Excuse my expression. I'm just getting passionate.
That's why I
with you
said.
now.
That's why I said with these court people, you will give me those documents. Those have my wife's name on them, and you're using them to defame her. I want every document you've got with her name on it. That's when they all of a sudden, now they found the case. Yeah, okay, well, we'll get that off to you. We won't charge you for any copies. Of course you fucking won't. Because if I have
So
to do
then,
a forensic securities on this, you're going to be writing her a check.
so then that would mean then the only way you would get them to perform, you have to threaten them going
Yep.
after what they're doing so they can send out the information to you. Because that's what I did. But I never received anything. I did the same thing, inquiring, but I never received anything.
Oh, I got a whole fucking transcript
Wow.
going in
Okay.
tomorrow, hopefully, and we'll see what happens there.
Okay. I yield.
Paper, which is good until properly rebutted. Customs and Border Protection bonds. That's the fidelity bond. Fuck that surety bond. Fuck the insurance bonds. Fuck the automobile insurance. Fuck the housing insurance. Fuck the flooding insurance. Who covers all postal roads and routes? The Postal Service. All bonds go through the Postal Service. Period. All of them. All of them have to go through the Postal Service. Again, under the auspice of Congress. Car nets. You feel like you've been caught in a net using that car? What is a car net? What is a car net? It's related to the harmonized tariff schedule. And that's what they're catching you in. They're catching you in the tax net. This part is concerned with the use of international customs documents known as car nets. That's a public system, folks. Public means international because they get all of their authority at the local county level, local municipal level by following that Treaty of Berne and the Law of Nations. It's the only way they get it. The only way they get it. Otherwise, you would be operating in a communist country regulating their own codes.
Brother Keith, I'm thinking about something in the passport sense when you're encouraged to apply for a passport. Can you hear me?
Yep.
When you're encouraged to apply for a passport and you fill out the application, you're putting all your data elements on that particular document, correct?
Right.
Now, in the sense that you're asking permission for you to move about, but literally the information on that paperwork is being posted, it's entered somewhere, and then that's the entry. So when they allow you to, well, physical people think when they have that they can cross over to go somewhere back and forth. So really it's just the instrument that you're utilizing in a passport document sense. You really don't
Right.
need it. It's just the instrument. It's just the
Exactly.
paperwork.
And so when it comes down to it, like I was saying, I've said many times before, I don't care if you're dealing with your neighbor. That is an international interaction. We are all foreign to one another. This is because, or this isn't because, but it's one of the effects of that is that we have a thing called the International Law of Nations, so that we can incorporate that lingua franca, so that if you do have a neighbor, you can speak to him one way or another. That's all it is. It's a communication system, and people merely need to learn how to use it.
Without outside interference. It also contains provisions concerning the approval of associations When you start associating with them by handing them documents to issue carnets in the United States covering merchandise to be exported. Like I said, that document is a piece of merchandise. It has valuable, intangible data elements that they need in order to survive. They live on the intangible data elements to be able to provide the physical enforcement and to guarantee carnets issued abroad covering merchandise to be imported. The carnet serves simultaneously as a customs entry document and a customs bond. A man is bound, a man's word bonds him. A man is bound by his words. It's customary. Air commerce regulations.
And that's the reason I pointed that out there, is because that birth certificate seems to work the exact same way. It's a carnet that attaches to the individual and keeps track of everything throughout his life on that statistical record.
General order, unclaimed and abandoned merchandise. See, that general birth registration should have been resolved within 30 days. After 7 years, it goes as abandoned. Well, of course, they can't have abandonment on there, so they have to reissue it because that survivor is known to be alive. They're still entering some kind of customs documents. They just haven't claimed it. It's unclaimed.
And if you remember our definitions from the Postal Service, the term abandoned meant unclaimed. They're synonymous. Understand the language that's being used and fix it.
And they have quotas just like the police. They have to have enough material information coming in to quantify their use of it and this fictional costs and charges. Mail importation of absolute quota merchandise. The merchandise is the quota, and that's the documentation you're giving them with those intangible data elements that says you're a United States citizen, which is a false record. You cannot possibly be a United States citizen, first of all, unless you were actually born in the United States.
And so when you start doing this stuff and using that paperwork in a fashion that says you're a United States citizen, then that paperwork itself has some kind of value. Whereas if you issue your documentation as a foreign entity that doesn't have those values, the United States can't take that value and make it a valuable paperwork for themselves. This is the extent of having your own private email or private site with a private hybrid email of a non-commercial domain extension. They can't use it for their quotas because there's no value unless you say so. And if you say so, then they can only use it in those quotas according to a consensual agreement where you get equal consideration for your quotas.
Anybody else born outside of that District of Columbia, the nationality is a conference. It is a grant of United States citizenship to be able to follow their paperwork and issue customs paperwork that they designed and formatted.
And never trained you how to do. They never told you why to sign that way or how to sign a different way and what the differences were. They never told you that the way you were writing your name was in fact a legal name and it was going to come with a liability every time you use it. They didn't tell you that stuff.
Entry of merchandise. Mom, when you're at that hospital, you enter.
Did you want to say something?
Yes, brother. I'm just in my head, but I'm thinking as you know, as you talk, and I'm looking up because the transportation is under Title 49, right?
Yep.
Well, I'm looking at that, and it's under 172.202A as an alpha, and I'm looking at 5A. I'm looking at section 5 under it's parentheses double I. And I know we always talk about offer and acceptance, right? But it's talking about the offer must be forwarded, must forward the shipping paper record for a loaded movement to the carrier prior to the shipment unless the carrier prepares the shipping papers on behalf of the offerer.
And that's what we're doing. See, the guy that's offering the application is offering it to us. We accept it and fill it out on behalf of them. We're not supposed to be doing that. If they're offering, then they're supposed to ask us the question, fill it in, and then they're supposed to sign it as the trustee, saying they got the qualified information from the guy that is supposed to benefit, the benefactor. It's that simple. That's how you make them stay in honor. That's the only thing I'm trying to help people learn. You are not qualified to put that information on that paper for them and sign it. They are the offerer. They're merely supposed to have that documentation in front of them. Ask you the question. You give them an answer. They write it down. They ask you the next question. You give them the answer. They write it down. When it's done, they sign it. They're the trustee.
So then how would one go about getting them to send the documents to you other than the doing an audit?
Why would you need the documents?
I'm trying to make sense of the last thing you said when
It's
you're
their
giving.
document. All
But
your
if they're,
intent is to receive the benefit. If you take that document from them, as a holder in due course, you now take on liabilities. This is the concept of going to Walmart and getting a wire transfer. And the nice lady on the other side of the counter says, "Can I see your ID, please?" "Yes, ma'am, you may." And I hold it up in front of her so she can see it. But she wants to have it. She wants to hold it. "No, ma'am, I can't do that. I can let you see it. But if I give it to you, you must take on the liability of putting any false information into that computer system. I know you wouldn't intend to do that. I know that's not your heart. But if it happens, then you are liable. But because of the way the system works, you won't accept that liability. I already know this. You can see the information that you need. That's all you need. Because you cannot enforce this instrument. Only I can."
so that seems like that these companies, organizations, and businesses only set up that way to take on a liability and put in false claims.
I can't presuppose that. All I can presuppose is that these people are indoctrinated just as much as I was, and that they just don't know what they're doing. So when it
Maybe I
goes,
misspoke. Maybe I misspoke, Keith. Not that they're creating false, well, not they're taking in false information. It means that
right, and
they're
that's
creating false claims.
right, and that is because of us. If we know our position first, they can't tell us you have to send your children to public school. You show me that law. You show me the law that says I have to send my child to public school, wherein then it will require an ID. When there is no law that requires an ID, their law is inconsistent in every fashion. You do not have to do anything they say. All you should do is find out where it's inconsistent, proving an impossibility that they cannot then enforce. Again, you show me the law that says I have to send my children to public education, that then says that I have to present identification documentation. That identification documentation is going to declare resident and United States citizen for somebody who is not able to contract. And parents, if you think you are registering your children into a public education system, I remind you the first 10 points of the Nuremberg Code, number 1, says the absolute voluntary consent of the human patient is absolutely essential. It is absolutely necessary. And if you're going to send your children to an indoctrination center as an experiment to see if they can qualify and beat out this United States citizenship before they get indoctrinated into it, then you're the one that is already indoctrinated and then transferring your children to an enslavement camp just because you were too. If you really want something better for your children, help them find something better. Quit doing the same damn thing.
Merchandise. And then they quantified the merchandise as a living soul, as a citizen of the United States, because it was born to a resident.
This is that enumeration at birth, where that is converted from an agricultural element. Animal includes but is not limited to man. And he was enumerated upon discharge of his mother's waters, but nobody declared that he took his first breath of life and became a living soul. So there remains a record of a man, and that was a commodity, and that was a customer's security, moms, that was then bifurcated, split titled, and hypothecated. That's the system that it works upon the enumeration at birth, again, making a false claim that there's a U.S. citizen known as a business. That is not what happened, folks. There was no creation of a United States business unless all parties were affirmed and consented. On the day you're born, you cannot consent. That is defamation of your name.
Property of that provisional government. Chattel. And it was entered into a foreign trade zone. 19 U.S.C. 81N and 81O talks about operating as a transmitting utility as a resident. And the only persons allowed to reside in the zone are federal, state, or municipal officials or agents whose resident presence is deemed necessary by the board. The board being the Department or the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of the Treasury. Now, the Bureau of Vital Statistics is the entry of the birth registration and the assignment of a Social Security number to a newborn child. And that is the start of all of it for the newborn.
Operation of zone as a public utility, cost of customs services, and that hospital is an operation of a zone as a public utility. On the first day, when that baby is born in a spell of illness, there is the provision of a service known as inpatient hospital services, and that is a custom service, Mom. Customed just for you.
That Bureau of Vital Statistics is regulated by the Department of Commerce. It is a commercial piece of merchandise. Was the trade fair? Because mom got no equal consideration. There was no consideration given to mom. So was that trade of data elements fair?
Remember, we talked about the trade show, right? That's United States business means United States citizen.
Was a trade of data elements explaining spell of illness fair? For the trade of data elements, creating a presumption of a United States citizen based on false information? I have serious questions for these people. Investigation of claims of evasion of anti-dumping and countervailing duties. Countervailing duties. This goes to the liquidation. If you are not created in a solid foundation of duties themselves, then the countervailing duties already still exist and don't need any liquidation. They themselves stand. He commanded, and it was done.
See, like I said before, I've got a public service. That is my duty in life, is public service. But my public service to my fellow man is not for a political regime of any sort. It's to owe no man anything but to love one another, for to love one another is to fulfill the law. And that's my only intent in this, is to try to figure out how to help everybody get out of debt. And again, it's seated in my heart and agrees with Leviticus 25, verse 25. That if I run across a brother that has sold off of his belongings, and I shall come across to redeem him, I shall do so. That's my job as a stranger and sojourner with our Father which art in heaven, the Redeemer. And I fear not, for I have been redeemed. He has called me by my name. I am his.
He spake, and it stood fast. Claims for liquidated damages. That's where you liquidate their record. And it's penalties, penal system, secured by bonds. That fidelity bond is what secures the prisons being able to operate in these territories.
That fidelity bond is that United States citizenship, that enumeration at birth. There's already one in play, and they're using it against you. Again, that's a matter of a probated estate through an administrative court that has no power of enforcement. And all it did was contract with you to take upon a sentence, and you agreed. And I too did it many times. I was the dumb bitch ass slave. Understand how this stuff works, and you realize that signature is very important. And when you learn the importance of it, you can walk right out of that lion's den while they demand that you give them a signature. Otherwise, they're not going to let you out. Nope, we're not going to let you out. You got to sign this release paperwork, or we're not going to let you out. Come on now. Come on. Don't you I know you're scared, brother. No, I ain't. No, I ain't. You got to get over it, people. Who is your true Lord? Is it that cocksucker sitting across that counter trying to tell you got to do something you in your heart know that you don't have to? Have you been so indoctrinated that you do believe that you're supposed to and that you have to? Because if that's the case, I hope you keep listening. I hope you keep coming back. I hope you keep doing the research. Again, folks, don't believe me. Don't believe your neighbor. Don't believe the government. For crying out loud, don't believe your mother. Do your research so you know. That is the main problem. Individually, people giving up their responsibilities to look out for their own goddamn ass because it's easier just to have somebody else to call when you need them.
Okay. 26 CFR 48. Here we go back to the tax code. Manufacturers and retailers, excise taxes. All those products manufactured in them prisons. That's where they're making their money. One of the places is that excise tax. Now, of course, all your other manufacturers, automobile manufacturers and everything, are still making the same taxes, whether they're located here or in a foreign country, because even they are considered by paperwork foreign to the United States. They are a corporate entity that incorporated under the laws of the United States. Okay. Here we go. 50 CFR. That's that military code, nationality, seizure and forfeiture procedures. And this is notice it says wildlife and fisheries. Remember we talked about environmental protection, conservation laws? The regulations of this part establish procedures relating to property seized or subject to forfeiture under various laws enforced by the service. United States Fish and Wildlife Service. You know, under 7 U.S.C. 136, animal includes man. Just so you know. 15 CFR, which is foreign trade. Now here it says 19 U.S. Code 2436 was eliminated. Okay. Oh, I see what it is. These are the codes and these are the CFRs. These are the statutes and these are the enforcement regulations. So when we look at that, it says ELIM. It means it was eliminated. It'll say, oh, designation of eligible articles. So this one hasn't been, it's up for elimination evidently. Designation of eligible articles. The president is authorized to designate articles as eligible articles. So when we look at that, it says ELIM. It means it was eliminated. It'll say, oh, designation of this subchapter by executive order. So what we're doing when we enter that birth registration is entering as a citizen of the United States, or we have to give them designation of eligible articles as a beneficiary developing country. Now, I'm not developing as a country, but we have the same equality of developing as a beneficiary. This disqualifies everything else because it qualifies as a country. But we can cross through that. We can line item veto that.
I am going to get better at this, I hope. I promise. I am going to work on it. I am working on it. I need a producer. My apologies. When it comes to this, the designation of the articles, that's that birth certificate, enumeration at birth, conference of a nationality, and it relates to a Calvo doctrine of the powers. When an immigrant comes upon a foreign nation and they claim their nationality, but they don't have a military force supporting them, the foreign nation that they're in does, and they assert that authority on the immigrant. Okay? And that's a false authority. The Calvo doctrine expresses the same thing that we've been discussing the past few days, those plenary powers, the plenipotentiary powers, the having the full powers to discern for yourself what is good, right, and just for you. Your ability to govern yourself is just as powerful yourself as any nation has to govern themselves. The distinction being that you don't need a military. You don't need all these other branches and stuff. You can do it all yourself intellectually. And that's where the true power lies. not physically. That's the competency.
And adopt the designation of eligible articles. Now, this is important because this is Treaty of Berne, which protects the literary and artistic works. Okay, so if they're protecting their work, their literary work, they have to protect it. Okay, while it's in the public domain, I can grab a copy of it and amend it. Now it is my literary artwork amending that, and they have to protect that.
And while I'm on it, I'll point out that as the United States, being under a military occupation of this democracy, and the people that work in Congress and the Senate and the House and all that, that's still a corporate occupation. Okay, so we are a developing country ourselves. You have a republic if you can keep it. We seem to have lost it, but it's being held in abeyance. The positions of government are being held in abeyance, and they are occupied. All we need to do is start filling them appropriately with the right people that will do so as a regular duty and obligation of public service to their fellow man out of the kindness of their heart, because they've already made their lifetime. You know, some older folks that have already been there, done that. People that have discretion, that can make good decisions, and not 30 and 40-year-olds that are in it for greed and contempt. Power, position, popularity.
It's an expression. Okay? Particularly if it's expressing a superior trust. Part 15 CFR, Part 2007, this is Commerce and Foreign Trade Regulations relating to foreign trade agreements, not contracts, not internal contracts. Office of the United States Trade Representative. U.S. regulations of the U.S. Trade Representative pertaining to eligibility of articles and countries for the generalized system of preference program. So we have here now what I was just explaining in the other one, where country disqualifies the eligibility part of beneficiary. And now we see pertaining to eligibility of articles and countries. So I can present an article independently without country. Okay, I don't have to have a nationality, guys. You do not have to have a nationality. Everything is by adoption. 19 CFR 10, article conditionally free. We saw that one before. And that's what I'm talking about. You do not have to be a nation. They're conditionally free already. Tear and draft. This is their scales, the weights and measures. You have to tear the scale first. You have to bring it to zero first. You have to start out at zero first, and then put the articles on there to see how much weight it has. So you start out with zero, and then you start drafting the material elements that come from the intangible thoughts. Again, Treaty of Berne protects these literary and artistic works. 150.
Remember the commercial term about negotiable instruments, and that it's a promise if it's a note, and an order if it's a draft.
59 is liquidation of duties again. And that's what we're doing in these literary works, the artistic works. We have to liquidate the duties. We have to liquidate our duties ourselves by letting them know we have a greater duty. 1305, immoral articles, importation prohibited. He is a respecter of no persons. This one element will defeat every birth registration at hospital registration for doing his good works and bringing forth another legacy heir, as you cast him into the earth and he is given the breath of life, making that man a living soul.
And as that living soul, it is not until that living soul reaches the age of majority that it then determines for itself, proving that society accepts him as a self-determined man, competent and duly qualified by the very raising of that village. It takes a village to raise a child. See, that's the problem with this enumeration at birth. It puts all these implications on the record that are false and can't be qualified until that body is fully grown and capable of making that discernment for themselves. And it must be a knowing discernment.
You cannot allow them to cross-reference through their documentation of birth registration that you have now just given birth to a person. You, in fact, did the good works of your Creator by following His creation command of loving each other. And you loved another man. And in that love, you were trustee for 9 months, the prenatal agreement that you stood by throughout the entire month. And then the water broke. That 9 months was that man's baptism. And if mom isn't speaking and acting the spiritual scripture in that 9 months, she's going to give birth to a person. He might be a great guy, but he's going to be a shitty person. I guarantee you. When that child is in the womb, mom and dad should be speaking to it and teaching it from that time. Mom and dad should be acting in their spirituality, in that love, before they consecrate that bond. Then when that bond is created and it's growing in that womb, they should continue with that spirituality. So that when that man is cast forth from the womb and he catches that breath and becomes a living soul, it's already instilled through him, through the communications. I knew thee before I formed thee in the belly. That is a communication. And that is the baptism by water. Hold on just a second.
And that's what happens through that enumeration of birth. That's the problem, folks. If you don't understand that entire process is the institution of this belief system that this society pushes forward in order to supposedly be stable and economic for you and provide you all the things that you need in life, while you recognize, or should recognize yourself, the devastation it causes by not knowing certain elements. Whereas now that you are learning, I hope you'll find better solutions, not after the fact, but before the fact. 18 years of indoctrination is a lot of work to be putting into somebody to then turn around and try to teach them otherwise. I was 50 years old before I realized there's something so seriously wrong that I have to stop everything I've been taught. There's no way that this system is working for the people. And I think it's totally because the people want the system for its conveniences, and they don't have the foresight to look at what they are causing. They think it's the system causing problems, or the people running these businesses, or the ones in office. We've all been indoctrinated. And part of the deeper indoctrination that we get into is because we still want convenience and comfort and don't see our own selves as the problem.
And then when that man is cast into this world, he begins his baptism by fire. Quench the coals yourself by being that spiritual being throughout eternity for that child. And that eternity includes before he is cast out of that womb.
It's that prenatal record I was talking about. If you're going to have some prenatal observations, again, not medical advice or anything, it seems to me it's always better to have that done privately. We have very capable midwives that can do a lot of things that you would be surprised about the expanse of their knowledge and the natural sources behind it.
Period. That's immoral. That is an immoral article. It's an unlawful and false conversion, violating, at least in my belief, my scriptures that I use for my holy writs. He is a respecter of no persons. Saw 12 before, that's a special class, is because he's a special class. Okay? Mail importations. Anything entered into the mail is an offer or a contract or an advertisement, an inducement. This is what I talk about. You either enter into the mails or you transit through the mails. Freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the Union. It doesn't get entered into the territory of the Union. It's throughout. Here we go with all the same ones again. 15 CFR, that's that Foreign Trade and Commerce. Regulations of the Foreign Trade Zones Board. There's that board. Well, let's look at that real quick. Scope, definitions, and authority. Normally they have scope, and then they'll have definitions, and then this is all three in one. Okay, so let's go. Scope. Sets forth regulations, including the rules of practice and procedure of the foreign trade zones.
You saw those two, right? That was one.
Yeah, those are the ones I use to qualify the phone number. And that's what it is. Remember, those foreign trade zones, everybody's acting as a resident, qualifying themselves as a resident. Foreign Trade Zones Act of 1934 is amended 19 U.S.C. 81A through 81U. Okay? Remember 81N and 81O, operating as a transmitting utility because you're claiming that you're a resident and the only persons allowed to reside in the zone are federal, state, or municipal officials or agents. You must have an oath of office or have a contract with somebody that has an oath of office.
And that's what that ID does. It says that you've got an oath or you've got a contract with the governor of the state who has an oath, and that you are doing things at the pleasure of the governor, the commander in chief, and that in that you also have a dual citizenship of a United States citizen doing things at the pleasure of the commander in chief of the United States, the president. When neither of these is true, you are not a resident on your way to becoming a president. You were never instructed in this stuff.
Period. If you don't, you are not qualified. Authority of the board. In general, in accordance with the Act, the procedures of this part, the board has authority to prescribe rules and regulations concerning zones. Nowhere else. It does not speak to land. It does not speak to fixtures appurtenant to the land. It says zones. .46 is foreign trade zones. It tells you. Foreign trade zones. Foreign trade zones are established under the Foreign Trade Zone Act, and the general regulations and rules and procedures are contained in 15 CFR Part 400. 15 CFR Part 400. What is 15 U.S.C. 1? The regulations set forth in 15 CFR are trusts, etc., in restraint of trade illegal. Penalty. Every contract, combination in the form of trust or otherwise, or conspiracy in restraint of trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations is declared to be illegal.
If they're going to say that you can't contract without having that identification in the name of a resident or a United States citizen, it's a violation of international contract law that says I have the right to sign a name or sign a contract in my name and not that of the United States. Therefore, when I try to qualify that signature and that fucking cocksucker on the side of the road says, oh no, you can't write that. You can't use that for your signature. You got to put your name down. No. You better learn the law. Again, there is no law that says I'm required to have an ID to begin with. Being that means you can't tell me I have to have an ID in order to contract. That's only you trying to interfere as a third party with my private affairs. Ain't none ya business.
Every restraint, and that birth registration is a fucking restraint. It's a direct violation for failure to publicly educate the residents and their offspring. They do not put this stuff in the public education system for a reason. They want you to keep presuming it so they can keep assuming all of the assets that you give them through the intangible data elements. It's the only way they can survive. And that is the scope. And today we have what's called as a modernized drawback. You can take all that shit back.
And we've spoken about this before. Maybe not necessarily here in front of you guys, but I've spoken about this before with other people in this community that you may or may not be familiar with. I remember a private Zoom that we did for over a year. Derek Gonzalez and a few other guys, this modern drawback, you can get all those taxes back. You can get all those fines, fees, and penalties back. You can get all those insurance payments back. You can get all the Social Security payments back. Because you weren't supposed to be paying that stuff to begin with.
Remember that drawer? You undraw it and redraw it. You draw it back to the origin. In the beginning was Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God. God is love, and I apologize for all of my belligerent acts of stupidity and ignorance. But let me now correct your record.
Correct. Excuse me. Correct and reconcile the record.
(81C). Remember this is the foreign trade zone exemption from customs laws of merchandise brought into foreign trade zone. Foreign and domestic merchandise of every description except such as is prohibited by law may, without being subject to the customs laws of the United States, except as otherwise provided in this chapter, be brought into a.
I'm going to take a break real quick. Go get me a drink, folks. I'll be right back. In the meantime, please enjoy this commercial break and hit that like, share, and subscribe button. There's a PayPal link down below and, of course, a StreamYard link for anybody who wants to join the panel.
Zone and may be stored, sold, exhibited, broken up, repacked, assembled, distributed, sorted, graded, cleaned, mixed with foreign or domestic merchandise, or otherwise manipulated, or be manufactured except as otherwise provided in this chapter, and be exported, destroyed, or sent into customs territory of the United States therefrom, in the original package or otherwise. But when foreign merchandise is sent from a zone into customs territory or the United States, it shall be subject to the laws and regulations of the United States, provided that whenever the privilege shall be requested, and there has been no manipulation or manufacture effecting a change in tariff classification.
And that's the problem. Affecting a tariff classification, the conference of a nationality of a United States citizen as a United States business is in fact exactly that, because it shows on and for the record the imposition of a taxpayer identification number on somebody who's not qualified to even pay taxes yet, and then the first 18 years of their life is used or spent educating them on using that identification for the rest of their life. That is manipulation, and none of it is required. No one can come up with any law anywhere requiring anyone to have identification. None. You must first subject yourself to a service voluntarily by knowing consent in contract form. Then, and only then, is an identification required, and it only applies to that relationship.
At birth registration affects tariff classification of a newborn right away. The assignment of a Social Security number to a newborn child classifies that newborn child as a you owe a debt to the United States. That is immoral. Got it? 27 CFR. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, distilled spirits plants. Why are we talking about this? Because you was born under a spill of illness. Distributed illness. And they planted it in a drawer. You might think I'm babbling, but that's okay. Beer, liquor, and articles from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. Exportation of alcohol. You know, the reason they withdrew prohibition? Because people were too smart. Despite their prohibition, what they did, in fact, just like the Tea Party, and just like they're doing now with marijuana, cannabis, they're providing a provisional source so that people can believe that they are now allowed by that provisional source to do that which that provisional source previously disallowed. You have a right to use any fucking thing you want, people. They don't have the right to allow you to not use or to allow you to use. And you do not owe trillions. Get off of it. Oh, no man, anything but to love one another. If you're professing that you owe somebody something, then you don't love. Get over it. I hate seeing comments like that. Reports. Because you took it from your port and reported it to their port, and therefore you exported it from yourself, and they imported it.
And it is the exporter that pays the duties. They're the one that pays the United States to keep record. Go ahead, sister.
So basically, I was reading, now that you were talking about that, I was reading something the past 2 days when I was doing about leases and lessor and all of that. And now that you're talking, it sounds like the data elements are considered the assets. Those are the assets that you are
Absolutely.
selling. One is one is the buyer of the assets and one is the seller of the assets.
Yep.
So that's where the valuable consideration will come in. Am I correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. I yield.
See, mom exported the data elements, but it was a gift. She granted them. Okay? So there's no commercial element there, but they turn around and create a commercial element. And that's the manipulation, and it's a change in the tariff system classification, and it's a variance from the categorical pretreatment standards that are fundamentally that have fundamental different factors.
So mom can literally be considered the lessor, the owner of the assets. So
Right.
that's another hat she can wear, correct?
Yes, and that's one of those things I've told people: go to your mom if your mom is still alive, and have her write a will, and that she's going to transfer that estate to you in her lifetime, because you are of age of majority, of sound mind, and competent to manage your own affairs now. You're going to execute your own estate. Yes, mom's the slave trader.
So
And
does
all
that
she's got
mean?
to do to fix it is to write up her will stating, that you are her legacy heir and that she intended to transfer that property to you and has realized that she didn't, and therefore she's doing so now. The state can't do anything about it. That's her name. Greetings,
So,
Joyce.
so quick question. So if mom is the lessor, that means if she's transferring assets, which is data elements, to her what do they call the offspring, right? Does that mean the offspring now becomes the lessee? Is that another title for the?
No, I wouldn't consider mom the lessor. I would consider her the owner, and that she's correcting the mistake in the record that um, the property is to be probated when the beneficiary is of age and competent to manage his own affairs now, and therefore the property merely needs to be transferred to the beneficiary as according to the law.
Well, the only reason I ask that because when you go into Investopedia, it states that the lessor is the owner of an asset that is leased under an agreement to a lessee.
Right,
So is
and it
that
was
in
given
rental?
to the
Is that in?
United States
So that is
through.
in is that is in the possession of renting, or is that in the possession of passing in a trust? I'm just trying to clarify.
I don't know how they have it in their records. That's the stuff we don't know. We do know it's a trust. We do know simple actions in a trust. Mom, as an informant, gave them information. She owned that information. There was no contract about it. She is not a lessor. There was no lease. What they did was they took the information that was given. They abstracted certain things like the first name, or the given name and the family name, and they translated it into a legal name that is now known as a first name and last name. That is fact. That is evidence of the trust, and that legal name being held in their custody means they are the trustee. Mom's the grant or grantee. The state is the trustee, and the individual named is the beneficiary and intended one, the one intended to receive the benefit, which is the estate, not just the car or this document, but the estate in whole of Keith Orland Little. Not Carla Little, his sister, but Keith Orland Little. That estate is intended for Keith Orland Little. He's obviously of age, obviously of competent mind and sound body, and yet here we have a state thinking that they can administrate his affairs as a matter of probate in violation of Scott versus McNeil, 1894. No court of probate has jurisdiction over the estate of a person who is in fact alive. No way about it. And just by them knowing Federal Rule of Civil Procedures 4, subsection K, that they have to give a summons along with a waiver of personal jurisdiction shows that they know that they do not have personal jurisdiction unless that waiver is signed by an appropriate, competent party, meaning that the court never gets personal jurisdiction without it. it's still just a presumption, as jurisdiction can be challenged at any time, even after the conviction, even after the sentencing.
Okay? Congressional advisors for trade policy and negotiations. Now, I don't know who they think they are going to advise me on in their trade policy and negotiations, because they think that I am subject to their Congress. So again, I have to express they are not any authority whatsoever, except under the Postal Congress, which is where they get their authority. And their authority under the law of nations is strictly to protect the literary and artistic works that they handle.
And of course, again, I remind you of the Constitution of the Universal Postal Union's preamble, where it discusses the fact that they're supposed to be the professionals in the communications of the people around the world.
Period. Nothing more. Information and advice from private and public sectors. The president shall seek information and advice from representative elements, the data elements in the record. He's not going to come knock on your door and talk to you. He's going to look at the fucking reports everybody else is giving him. How disjointed is that? You hear about the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing because there's 1,500 fucking hands in between, and they're all up your ass. Interagency Trade Organization. Now, this is where the United States is a foreign trade zone itself. Through its special maritime and territorial jurisdictions, it puts a map overlay, an extension of that 10 square miles for other people that have ceded, or other entities that have ceded their jurisdiction to them so they could provide foreign trade zones for them, known as.
So we have the United States as a foreign trade zone that then grants foreign trade zones to each state. Each state grants a foreign trade zone to the municipalities. And those municipalities, however, have a delegation of county authority for that state sovereignty.
States. In those states, the counties cede their jurisdiction to the state for that same privilege. In those counties, they too cede their jurisdiction to the municipality, cede their jurisdiction to the county so they can operate as a foreign trade zone. And it is all presumed that by using a federal address at the lowest level, the resident who doesn't know what the fuck he's doing has also ceded his jurisdiction to the municipality, who then has ceded their jurisdiction, or who has previously ceded their jurisdiction to the county, previously ceding their jurisdiction to the state, previously ceding their jurisdiction to the United States, previously ceding their jurisdiction to the Treaty of Berne, the Law of Nations, the Universal Postal Union under the United Nations.
With the local government known as Washington, D.C., District of Columbia, in their code, which is known as long-arm statutes for at-arm's length contracts at the local levels.
Pure and simple. Again, we go back to trade and foreign trade and commerce, creation, organization, and functions. Okay, I'm in the development stages. I have already created the Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union, and I'm not organized. And my functions are those of his will. That organization is already created. I'm in association with that. I do not have to organize as Keith Orland Little Faith-Based Union under the constructs or auspices of a foreign trade zone. I do not have to do that. Any developing nation takes decades to organize. This is the problem with the Ukraine. Everybody else has got their hands in Ukraine's ass trying to organize them. Regulations of trade, policy, staff, committee. Post offices are inland marine installations staffed with United States Postal Service employees. Bonded warehouses again. Articles conditionally free again. We have excise tax on green mail. Imposition of excise tax on green mail. In general, Section 5881 of the Code imposes a tax equal to 50% of the gain or other income tax realized by any person on the receipt of green mail. Gain of income realized by the person on the receipt of green mail. Did you get a receipt? Did you realize a gain on it? Was it at least 50%? That's that motor vehicle operator's lease. You have to make a handwritten statement of your intent. And that intent is 50% of its use for trade or business, which is further defined as the performance of the functions of public office. Your intent is for 50% of performance of public office so that you can impose the tax yourself. You are acting as a tax collector. Beneficiary country. Again, I'm not established or organized as a country. I'm a private foundation, and I have the same right of benefit of the military script use without harm. If they get to use it without harm, I get to use it without harm. You just have to declare certain material elements for cross references. Extension of time for paying taxes. Again, because we're in the development stages and we don't pay taxes and are not qualified to pay taxes, there must be an extension of time for paying taxes. The extension of time is in perpetuity because our intent is not to enter into that foreign trade zone. Again, qualifying it with cross references. He is a respecter of no persons. Oops, wrong one. Excise tax on structured settlement, factoring transactions. So once you've settled and become organized,
I've got a structured settlement and I need cash now.
then you can start factoring your transactions. So you can proceed and administrate. 27 CFR, here we go back to the alcohol, drugs, and manufacturers excise tax on firearms and ammunition. The DIC Act, the Militia Act, that license, that identification places you in the Militia Act, that birth registration places you in.
You guys know what that was all about, don't you? The Buck Act?
The Militia Act, saying that
Passing the buck.
at some point in time you become age of majority and you want to enter in the military forces, they will give you a firearm. They will provide you with firearm and ammunition so you can be part of the militia. If you want to go through some education to become a police officer, you can even do that. Okay, now we get into some customs laws, customs codes here, 6214, 6213, 6211, 6212, or excuse me, tax. Let's start out with 164, taxes. General rule. Except as otherwise provided in this section, the following taxes shall be allowed as a deduction for taxable year within which paid or accrued. That's at 50%.
See, taxes actually apply to the military, folks. Taxes actually apply to the military.
They're going to give you a deduction, but you have to qualify that 50%. Otherwise, it's just a presumption. 6211 is definition of a deficiency. Deficiency. In other words, the data elements on the record prove a deficiency because you.
Remember, we talked about that not too long ago in regards to that record reflecting accurately. See, there is a deficiency because there's a greater truth. It's got actually too many data elements in it, and that is, in fact, the deficiency. It causes an inaccurate imposition, which causes a inefficiency, meaning that it's going against the grain of that budget. It's one of my favorite comments now is if I'm dealing with any of these people down at the courthouse, of course, you know I'm only doing this to help sustain the state's budget. Yeah, I know the state's spending way too much, so I'm doing it to help sustain their budget, to keep them from spending more than they ought to.
You've never taken an oath. You don't have a valid contract. That is a deficiency. Okay? All you got to do is correct that record. Give them a notice of the deficiency. Restrictions applicable deficiency. Petition to the tax court. I don't petition it. I put it in the public venue on my site. If they don't like it and they want to try to contact me, I'm going to send them my site. I'm not going to send them their codes. I'm going to send them my site with a private little email cross-referencing their codes. Determinations by tax court. I don't give a fuck what your determination is. Your determination is already proven to be immoral.
And I've already had communications with the IRS, and they've acquiesced at every turn. So now I've got an international notice telling the whole world all about it. And there's not one damn thing they can do about it. And remember, that's published in the International Forum through a .art domain, protected literary art.
I don't put up with it anymore. None. These are all repealed, I believe. Repealed, yep. But when you go down to notes, they'll tell you what it was relating to. Relating to information regarding windfall profit on domestic crude oil. Repeal applicable to crude oil removed from the premises on or after August 23rd, 1988. Set out as an effective date 1988 amendment note under section 164 of this title. So we already saw that. 164, we read that. That one too is repealed. Let's look at this one. Foreign trade regulations, general requirements, purpose and definitions. Purpose. This part sets forth the foreign trade regulations as required under the provisions of Title 13. What's Title 13, folks?
Anybody know what Title 13 is?
Title 13 is the Census Bureau.
Bureau of Vital Statistics. The beginning of it all, regulated by the Department of Commerce. And here we have Title 15, Commerce and Foreign Trade. And if you remember, 15 U.S.C.U.N.T.S was talking about violations of trust law. That's what this is. This is trust law. Commerce and Foreign Trade.
Statistics. The birth registration is entered into the Bureau of Vital Statistics. Now, the Bureau of Vital Statistics, like I said earlier, is regulated by the Department of Commerce. It is, in fact, a trust instrument, and it is, in fact, an immoral trust instrument.
That converts you from your position as a benefactor to that of a trustee through a little bit of manipulation and change in the tariff system's classification. Variance from pre-categorical or from categorical pre-treatment standards that are fundamentally different factors.
Because with a population of 380 million and no educational curriculum throughout the entire 50 states of that union, no one teaches trust law and how it operates in accordance to the Bureau of Vital Statistics and your part in it.
Nobody ever taught you about how this Social Security system works. Nobody taught you that it's military. Nobody taught you that it's totally administrative, and that by that implication, you weren't just going to benefit from things, but you were going to be subjected to the penalties and obligations that all of these foreign actors are getting paid for on your dime, on your sweat equity.
No one. Hell, in driver's education class, they don't even teach about your right to travel. Your freedom of transit is guaranteed throughout the entire territory of the union. But if you're going to subject yourself to a contract or oath of office, you got to have a driver's license. We got to teach you how to drive. They don't tell you that in school, do they?
Yeah, that's one of those things that's kind of disturbing. You know you have a right to travel. It's been proven, yet they'll still insist that no, that's just you're misinterpreting it. No, it's not. It's not a misinterpretation. Not by us. It's already been determined by the courts, so therefore it's a misinterpretation by everybody else that's saying, no, the courts didn't mean this or didn't mean that. Yes, they did. That's exactly what they said. So how do we have a public education system that says that you have all of these rights, but you don't have the right to travel? Because that's essentially what they're saying when they teach you driver's ed, which is a commercial construct in the public education system, as if though it's required. No, if you want to travel, you have to learn how those automobiles run. You have to know the dangers and the consequences of not being able to conduct yourself appropriately while in their maintenance.
The
They don't
question
teach.
that I have, Brother Keith, is so does that mean the Census Bureau, any data elements uh, uh, that is taken in or given to them, are they under some kind of a protection?
Absolutely. That's what the cybersecurity is all about. That's what public and private data elements are about. They have to have certain things that are classified information. We can internally view those records, but we can't give anything to you. You know, and that's why I say no, no, no. If that's got my companion's name on it, I want every goddamn document you got because I've already got record that you converted things and used it against her. I want that record now.
So to me, I would think that a lot of these businesses operate inequality as the Census Bureau and other, that when they take in information, they're doing the same thing. It seems like their whole process is set up to make everyone obligors.
Well,
If
yeah,
it's transferring, you know where I'm going with it, Keith?
well, they want everybody to believe that they're responsible for things, but in that responsibility, that on the other side of the counter, those people are just doing their job, and their job is to make us responsible, while they have no responsibility or liabilities. No, we're just doing our job. You have to do it. No, that's not the way it works. You're the fucking public servant. You're the trustee, not me. It's that simple. I don't know where these people think they get off thinking that they can do this stuff and not know the first thing about their duties, and that is in trust form. Again, I urge people to understand that I was indoctrinated. I was a bitch ass fool. You know, it's the same thing, redundant throughout the entire society. Everybody's been indoctrinated to believe that all they got to do is just listen to the boss, and when they have a problem with the guy on the other side of the counter, hey, listen, I'm just doing my job. That's not an excuse. Convenient as it might seem, that's evidence that you're the one that has a job, and that job is specific as a public service, means you are a trustee. Now that means the guy on the other side of the counter's got to be one of two things: the grantee or the beneficiary.
Is what is immoral about the entire public education system. That is what is immoral about the entire birth registration. 13 U.S.C. 301. Collection and publication. You're the one that's giving them all the data elements for that fucking statistical record. You are the statist.
And I'll fill that in a little bit with that last statement, because you could also be another trustee, but that would only be in a knowing capacity of making an investment, because that's the only thing a trustee is really allowed to do, aside from protecting the assets so that they could be transferred to the beneficiary eventually, but that they can invest in those assets certain ways so they would be able to create a greater benefit for the beneficiary. And that means they could, of course, invest with other investors. But again, that would most certainly be a knowing investment.
Quit giving them those data elements. Steel import and monitoring analysis system, they do the same thing with everything you import. That medical record is an import record, and they are analyzing you according to the data elements you give them. Link to an amendment published at 85 FR 83814. Notice that link sent me to another page where you had to copy the link. That's cybersecurity. It's creating a private route within the programming. Federal Register. List of subjects, Part 361, Administrative Practice and Procedure, Business and Industry, Imports, Reporting, and Record-Keeping Requirements, Aluminum.
And notice, that's business administration. That citizen is a business, and it's under administration. And yet you have to go to college to get business administration, right? But by then you've already claimed that you're a resident. Young man of 18 years of age, you're already a resident. You already have your own business. You don't need to go to college for business administration. You already been taught. You know how to do it. Just sign right here, sir. Bend over. There you go. Don't scream or holler. I'll shove it twice as deep.
Online registrations, automatic issuance of import license. Supplementary amendments, supplementary information, second and subsequent notices. Why it came to aluminum, I don't know. Don't ask me. I have no idea.
And that's just an interesting thing that I think about when I look at some of these codes is, why is this in here? We're talking about the General Education Provisions Act. And here we've got a code in here referencing the weights and measures of aluminum and shit. What is that all about? Again, I don't know. It just behooves the shit out of me.
Have no idea why it took us there. 39 CFR. You guys recognize that one? That's the Postal Service. Okay? International Postal Service. You have a right under the Treaty of Berne, again, protection of literary and artistic works, to be able to post them in any media. You do not need a postal worker to do it for you. You do not need an international contract. Okay? All you have to do is adopt various different documents. Like I showed you on my site, I've adopted all those documents. So all you got to do is adopt them. Let them know that you're aware of it and you have education. And you're no longer going to let them fuck with you, because you're not going to enter documents or enter data elements into their records so they can file them for their commercial immoral use. Not going to happen. 361 goes to that. Excuse me, that's the wrong one. We need to go here. Sorry. General information on Postal Service. See that cross-reference? Incorporation by reference. This is why we have to do the cross-reference. So it's not incorporated by reference. You give them a cross-reference so they can't incorporate it.
That's one of those things about asking questions too. You don't make valid, straight statements. You make references to other statements for correlations, and then of course, you ask questions based on those. You don't go. You really need to learn to quit going around making baseless claims. It struck me so odd. I'm going to excommunicate you. And that is just such a baseless claim just on those two words. Excommunicate you. So the language itself is very important. And I urge everybody once again, unlearn what you've learned, relearn concise English, and then get into the roots of everything. Find out what means what, so you can get correct references to time periods, events, the interpretations, cultural origins and differences. People talk about my profile name El Perro, and some seem to think it means the dog. You can go ahead and placate that's what it means all you want, but I'm telling you, I took it from ancient Kemet, and it means God, temple.
Okay. Hazardous, restricted, and perishable mail. Going back to the trust again, foreign trade regulations, 19 CFR 360 and 361 again. There's 39 again, same again, same again, same again. Eligible articles. Eligible articles. Unless otherwise excluded.
This goes to those immoral articles, improper importation. Eligible articles. See, mom and dad didn't herald the legacy heir and have that put into the public record. Therefore, the fiction that stems from that is not an eligible article. Again, not only that, but that eligible article isn't supposed to be entered until that individual reaches age of majority and can enter that article himself, because it's his article, his creation. Somebody else's creation, even mom's, in agreement with the state as an informant, that creation is not valid. Again, it was created in an image and likeness that presumed that when I turned 18, it would be mine, without again teaching the concept and distinctable difference that it's a United States citizen known as a business. Now, what if I didn't want to grow up and become a transfer agent? Huh? What if I grew up and decided I wanted to be a fireman? What if I grew up and decided I wanted to be a policeman and not a United States citizen? See the difference? What kind of business is it? Where is that distinction?
From eligibility by this chapter and subject to section 423 of the Tax Reform Act. It must be a taxable article. It must be a commercial article. It must have the intent of performing the functions of public office. Must. Customs Forfeiture Fund. They have a fund to qualify for recoupment. There is established in the Treasury of the United States a fund known as a Customs Forfeiture Fund, which shall be available to United States Customs Service, subject to appropriation with respect to seizures and forfeitures by the United States Customs Service and the United States Coast Guard. I've been telling you, the Coast Guard is the policing authority.
And anybody that has any kind of seizures going on, this is where they're supposed to get their duly delegated authority to do so per case. These judges aren't supposed to be ordering this stuff. They're supposed to be ordering this stuff through the customs office here. See, it's the Coast Guard that regulates all inland policing.
They regulate all police throughout the country. That's why the police come and grab all of your shit, and not the Coast Guard, not the Customs Service. It's the police at the local levels that are coming and grabbing your shit because you're the one saying you're a resident, and they.
And there's an interlocal agreement for jurisdictional control of exclusive state vital statistics jurisdictions that are running around carrying that ID.
They will believe you every time you say that, because that's what gives them authority in that zone. Here we go. 50 CFR 12 again. Seizure and forfeiture procedures. They're supposed to be protecting life, liberty. Beneficiary country. The term beneficiary country means a country listed in subsection B, which means you already have to have a name recognized in their record so that you can benefit from that record. Therefore, you're classified as a beneficiary country and not just a mere beneficiary.
And again, that's that internationally protected person as well, which is a nationality conferred upon an American and has American interests superseding the protection internationally of that person. So why would you need a passport?
Okay. 1872, Interagency Trade Organization. I am not organized to trade with the other interagencies. I'm not going to do it anymore. Establishment functions. Membership and composition. Remember, we talked about the college composition handbook. How is it composed? What is its position? Position with. Are you with your Father which art in heaven, or are you with?
There is but one Father which art in heaven. And by taking upon that nationality, you give up that position and you disposition yourself into the personage. And again, he is a no respecter of persons.
The president as a resident, participating in representatives of other agencies in their meetings because you gave data elements and don't get to go into the meeting. Trade Remedy Assistance Office. There is established in the Commission. United States International Trade Commission.
So again, like I said, everything is international and it just needs to be expressed. They already wrote it down. It's already there. This is what they're supposed to be following. And notice that says commission. Again, that's a military commission.
Everything's a commission, just like a sales commission. Interagency organization. Where'd I go here? Trade Remedy Assistance. They have to cooperate. Section 339 of the Tariff Act of 1930 has amended established a commission and office known as the Trade Remedy Assistance and directs the commission to provide general information to the public upon request. See, this is the problem. We should be requesting this at all times so that we can show that we have to keep our children out of school, the public education system, because the public education system is training our children in a military.
And people don't want to request this kind of stuff because that means they have to take back some of that responsibility and start doing some of the work. Well, that's going to relieve the government of some of the work that they're dependent upon. And God damn it, they want that benefit. So let's keep piling up the benefits. You see how idiotic this has gotten? People giving up that parenting for convenience and the ability to vote somebody into some damn office so that they can regulate out plastic straws in paper wraps so we can start using paper straws in plastic wraps, still have the same fucking problem, still be crying about it, and nobody gives a fuck still.
Script and not the scriptures that we should be using as our holy writs. Language very specific there, folks. Repealed Reemployment Trade Adjustment Assistance Program. Reemployment Trade Adjustment Assistance Program, because they realized this isn't going to be any good. People are going to realize they're being reemployed in the trade and their adjustment assistance program.
We have a large immigration going on. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem anymore.
Limitations on trade readjustment allowances. There's a limitation on it. You have to put the limitation on it, not subject to it. Weekly amounts of readjustment allowance. Agreements with the states. The Secretary is authorized on behalf of the United States to enter into an agreement with any state. Did you enter into an agreement properly and make a proper declaration so that it was entered properly? No, this never happened. It's presumed. They have an agreement with the United States and the state. That is the.
And that agreement is presumed to extend unto you, and it does. And all you have to do is learn how to assert it and how it extends unto you. Again, it's a trust service. So yeah, the nation and the state are in contract as trustees, co-trustees of the public trust, of which you are the benefactor. For if it not be for your data elements that you gave to the beneficiary, known as the record, they wouldn't have anything to do. They'd be standing around with their thumbs up their ass.
Debt previously contracted. It does not carry on to you except by the assumptions that you're making based on their presumptions. Quit it. Qualifying requirements for workers. See, like I said earlier, you're acting as a tax collector, you're acting as a postman, you're acting as a banker, you're acting as a lawyer. You're doing everything on a presumption or assumption, and they are accepting it.
You're wearing all those different hats, don't know it, but gladly willing to do it because they ask you to. You got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to go have a job and make sure you make good money so you can do everything you want to do and make sure that everybody thinks that you're of the same high class that they are. And you know, it all makes me sick. Makes me think about my mom telling me, Keith, you know, if you want to if you want to learn how to fly like an eagle, why do you keep hanging with that flock of turkeys? And the whole time she thought the eagles were judges, attorneys, lawyers, cops, stuff like that, when those are the fucking scum of the earth.
Okay? No war operates on one. It has to have two parties. You're party to it.
Not all of them, of course, but you get my point.
Benefit information for workers. See, they're not going to give you any benefit information until you become classified as a worker. Then it can benefit you. Otherwise, you have to learn all this shit on your own. That's the only way you get benefit out of this. And that's why I keep telling people the true benefit under Hosea 4, verse 6 is knowledge. Knowledge of letting no tongue prosper against you. And the only way you can let no tongue prosper against you is by learning the tongue.
And then being careful to maintain good works for he who believed unto God, constantly affirming his will, which is a faithful saying, and that these things are good and profitable unto men.
Okay, let's go back to petitions and determinations. See, we're not going to petition them. We're going to make a valid declaration that they can't deny, and we're not going to do it to the United States. We're going to do it to the UN. We're not going to. We got to quit monkeying with these monkeys. If you want to be a living soul, you have to act like a living soul and not a monkey, repeating after everybody else. General terms and conditions for investment assistance. Why is this? Business credit and assistance in the statistics. Huh? This is the statistics title. And like I said, when you walk into that court and you give them a name and number, they are entering you as an investor in the court registry investment system and putting your name down as a firm name and not the last name, and using the social security number as the obligor number instead of the beneficiary. You're entering into a business credit and assistance. They can only get it by you. They can only have it by your credit. And they have your assistance in doing it. You are assisting them. Trade adjustment assistance for firms. Like I said, and I've got documentation that proves this. You walk into court here. Well, I don't know if they do it anymore because I've spotted out over for the last 6 years. But I went down there and I got a financial index, full index on all court charges that I have in these courts in Iowa, all 93 cases. And at the very top, it says that it was entered as a firm. I've never organized as a firm. I never knew that that's what they were doing on that docket. But that unlawful conversion is in fact immoral. And it leads back to that birth registration and all the confusion and the non-education about how it works in the public education forum. Period. Shows it on the record. It's false. Group eligibility.
And that's one of those things that, I urge everybody to do is when you get these documentations from anybody, I don't care if it's the hospital, the school, the court, no matter what kind of documentation you're getting, phone company, car rental, car dealership, look at the paperwork, read it. Take the time to sit down and read it. And really think about what you're reading. Because when you start thinking about going to the emergency room, and they hand you a document, says, here, will you fill this out for me, please, so you can receive emergency services. Like I said, you go to the emergency room because it's an emergency, and they hand you a document that says sales agreement. Now, if you're accepting an offer of a sales agreement by taking the document and filling it out, then you just contracted. Whereas if you are coming in as a trust and you see them as a trustee and they offer you such a document, and you tell them, well, I can't fill it out, but you can fill it out for me and sign it as you're supposed to. See, I'm not here to make a sales agreement. I'm here because of a community care concern that you're qualified to help me with as a matter of an emergency. I'm the benefactor of this trust, of which you are obviously a trustee, and that means who granted you these powers is the one I speak to, and you just do your job. You have to learn how to assert this stuff.
So Keith, that will be in pretty much all cases, correct? In all case or events that you participate in.
Absolutely. They try to tell you you have to register your children for school. Are you not the trustee? Are you not working? Are you not a public servant? Well, yes, that means you're working for the public trust. You're speaking to the benefactor, sir. The very one you're supposed to protect. That's as simple as it gets, folks.
Requirements. The group is the residence in the school zone that is monitored by the voting zones. Agricultural workers, oil and natural gas industry, because you are multiple cultures, you are considered workers, and they provide the utilities from the oil and natural gas industry. Did you guys know that you're not supposed to be paying for electric at all? Electric is supposed to be free. And that's why they only put oil and natural gas industry. Petitions and determinations. Again. Market disruption. If you don't qualify as a resident, you should be disrupting their market because they're unlawfully using that definition, that classification for their marketing, for their advertising. They can only get their advertising to you through that resident address.
Contract postal unit. The common carrier of a listing agreement known as a license or driver's ID.
Investigations relating to global and bilateral safeguard actions for market disruption, trade diversion, and review of relief action. I urge people to quit going to those courts. You do not belong in those courts. As soon as you step into those courts, you're considered on the other side of the ledger as investing in their market.
And this is for, it says here, subchapter B, non-adjudicative investigations. So again, it's a matter of correction of the record. Non-adjudicative investigations. There are errors in the record that need to be corrected, amended, reclassified, declassified, whatever. They are errors, and the integrity of the record is the issue.
Keith, a question that I have. So would that mean an amendment? If an amendment is supposed to be a change or an alteration, and when you're dealing with financial documents, they call it an addendum. Are they equally used, or how are they slightly different than one another in name?
Yeah,
Because an addendum can also alter or change a contract in some form or fashion, as I've been reading.
right, and they're all going to do the same thing. AD means to add. That's going to change something. Everything that they do like that is a change. It's not its natural form. It's not the given name and family name, and we were never taught to write the given name and family name. And then another thing, like I want to remind everybody, go ahead and take a look at that report card from your child. You know, that they bring home from school. Look on that report card and tell me if it doesn't have the last name first, comma, and then the first name and middle initial. That's a military style. Those schools are military, the hospitals are military. Everything's military, folks. Do not be confused.
True tort claims are handled by the Postal Service, guys. Action to facilitate positive adjustment to import competition. It's a positive adjustment on this side, and it's a negative adjustment on the other side, because like I said, they're going to treat you as an investor in their court registry investment system without qualification. Organization of the commission, that's the Federal Trade Commission. Investigations relating to global steel import. 7 CFR. Check that one out. See what that 7 CFR? There's your agriculture. International agricultural trade. You are multiple cultures. They call it the melting pot of the world. United States is the melting pot because it's so full of agriculture. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to drop this link so everybody can read this stuff. But as we go on, you'll see all kinds of different codes here. They're going to tell you the titles and everything. These are the statute side, and this is the regulation CFR side. Okay. So when you go through,
See the 50 U.S.C. 4609.
you look, 4609 not found. That's the military right there, nationality right there.
Oh, President Export Council. Okay, I just had to look that up real quick.
50 USC. War and National Defense, current through 114. And it says Appendix War and National Defense has been eliminated for disposition of provisions of former Title 50 Appendix in Title 50 War and National and other titles. See Table 2 of the editorial note set out preceding Section 1 of Title 50. Provisions that appeared under the heading Proclamations, Executive Orders, Joint Resolutions, and Treaties respecting war, neutrality, and peace. In material preceding Section 1 of Title 50, Appendix can be found under the same heading in the material preceding Section 1 of Title 50. This is telling you how to write your statements of peace, your proclamations, declarations, and everything. Under 50 U.S.C. 4305, Section B2, we talk about full acquittance and discharge, where no person shall be held liable in any court.
So much like the contract terms and conditions of the Title 48 codes for federal acquisitions, and your state statutes, those are all contract terms and conditions that you can get used to the language of them to use in your own contracting. So it's like the sales agreement from the emergency room. When they have a comment on the back of there that basically says that the customer agrees to make third-party payment for the consumer so long as it's understood that the credit is given to the customer's account, then that's a good qualifying statement for me to go ahead and extend my credit for the consumer. And then it's already bound, and they're bound then to, upon that special deposit, again, according to their definitions and everything, that they are now obligated to give credit as directed.
And this is why it's important to let no tongue prosper against you. And this is why it's important to learn their tongues. We have to go through these codes to see what they're doing. 37 CFR. Patent, trademarks, and copyright, secrecy of certain inventions and licenses to export and file applications in foreign countries. They violated this with the birth registration. This is what makes it immoral. They took something that was inherently yours as a child to be able to patent and trademark and copyright later when you got age of majority, and they put it on a document that says it's a merchandise document. That merchandise document is being used throughout your entire life without a proper patent, trademark, and copyright protection. They failed to institute it properly by proper education of how it was to be used.
And this is relative to that chart that I showed you where upon certain activities, a birth certificate is put out onto the market and sold. If you don't understand that chart, that's exactly what happens. There are certain conditions throughout societal activities where if you go to court, somebody's pulling up one of those bonds because they have access to those data elements, you know, like a clerk. And so they pull up a bond in your name and then pool it, and that pool goes into a bond in their name, and it's known as a firm investment. And goodness gracious, all of it's done without disclosure to certain people that if they knew that, then they might not do that. That would be 18 U.S.C. 1589, forced labor, a 20-year sentence.
So now we got all these 50 U.S. codes here. Not found. Repealed. Repealed. And again, you can go through and read the notes on these and find out what they related to. It'll tell you what they related to. Okay? Go through all of them. I'm going to scroll down here. Like I said, I'll drop this link, but I want to go through some of these other codes. You notice there's a bunch of 19s and 13s. We're going to get down here a ways, and we're going to find out how 19 ties in with, and of course you see 20. It's employment, custom employment, which is a military provision. So the employment is a military force, and how it relates to nationality. And you notice Title 15 in there. That's trade or international trade and trust law, or trade and commerce, which is in fact trust law. And you can tell this by 15 U.S.C. 1 trust. It's telling you it's trust law. 35 is patent and trademarks. 35 in the code, the regulations is Panama Canal. So this title does not match the code of regulations, and that's why there's no regulations here. This is the patent code, and the Title 35 under the regulations is Panama Canal, because that's where all the.
So it's codified, but there's no regulations that match. If there's regulations, they're in a different. They're enumerated under a different code, and therefore they don't match. Therefore, they're not. It's not positive law.
The documents are imported through, and so they're claiming patent and trademarks on that name through the birth registration. This is why I say it's immoral. Okay. Military Code, Title 10, revised Title 41. Let's get down here to these military codes and nationality. Ooh, I see a 49. Did I see a 49? 49 is transportation. No. Maybe it's 29. 29 is labor. And there's a bunch of your agricultural export promotion strategy. There you go. They're exporting all those data elements from all the different cultures. Title 22 is foreign relations. Bank loan loss reserves. Policy. Oops, that's the wrong one. Fair trade and financial services. They violate that with the birth registration. That's an unfair trade document causing restrictions.
You guys understand that? Unfair trade document causing restrictions. Again, because we go through this public education system with founding documents like that that are meant to be used as the financial mechanisms of extending credit. And yet we're never taught this. And therefore we end up looking at this credit score and taking out loans when in fact it's the bank that is borrowing.
$12 CFR banking. There we go. There's some 50s. 504305. There it is. Full acquittance and discharge, folks. And as we see, the CFR is correlating under 15 CFR trust law at 730, general information. Commerce control list, overview of the country chart. If you're not on this list, they have no control. I just posted this yesterday or so. 774 is the commerce control list itself.
And that's your identification system. Like I said, that identification it's got minimum listing agreement requirements. And a listing agreement is merely an advertisement. In other words, you're going to list certain information, advertising services, and that information is a name and address where somebody can simply get a hold of you. That's the minimum listing agreement requirements. Name and address. Now that sounds like somebody might have been indoctrinated into becoming a contract postal unit. In a foreign venue, meaning that it is most certainly international, again, like I said, without being properly educated as to what that venue is and how it operates, so that they could operate that internationally protected person in its true and correct capacity, instead of having it being used against them and detrimental for the United States itself. All at the behest and the greed of the state and its officials and the ignorant, indoctrinated people in these capacities that really shouldn't be doing this stuff. Teachers, I don't think you should be teaching other people's children about how to whip their dicks out and determine whether they should cut the damn thing off or not. You know, that's something of an age of majority issue. And if you can't deem it for yourself, then I have serious thoughts about having some people like you locked up in institutions where you can't get out.
Commerce control list overview and the country chart. Okay. We go down further. 1295A, 19 CFR 161 is omitted, and it is in relation to regulation of transactions and foreign exchange of gold, silver, property transfers, vested interest, enforcement penalties was omitted because Section 4305B, 2, full acquittance and discharge. Okay.
So now, like I've said before, you know, when it comes to today's monetary system, we have negotiable instruments, and the paperwork itself, you can negotiate as a matter of discharge because of the gold clause. We have no real way of paying. If you do not understand this, then I urge you to try to pay your taxes in gold. They can't accept it. I don't know what you people got induced into believing through that gold clause, but they already enacted that gold clause, took the gold that they could take, and now if you try to pay them in gold, sorry, you better understand the obligations of the United States, and that says stamps or other representatives of value. If you try to pass them gold, it's already got a stamp on it. The only way they can accept gold is unstamped and be able to put their stamp on it. And that's not a good faith trade. Think about this stuff, folks. The negotiable paper that you have in front of you, all you have to do is negotiate it. The greater truth you can put in it, the better it's going to turn out for you.
Is everybody comprehending this? They replaced, they removed all the gold and everything and replaced it, so you don't have to use gold anymore. You can just issue a declaration or a directive to the nation under Title 12 for all banking procedures for fair trade in financial transactions. Okay? And it's relating to 19 CFR 1864, import sanctions for export violations.
Export violations. Do you understand this? This is export violations. That's what you're doing. You've been exporting things that you shouldn't have been. Again, it's you. And again, yes, the education system is a very large part of it. But again, it comes to a point in time where you're full-grown big boys and girls. And it's time to take a serious look at those documents and quit putting it on everybody else and quit trying to say I'm a conspiracy theorist or I'm a sovereign citizen or people like me are just running scams and frauds. And there comes a point in time where all you got to do is sit down and look at that document. And like I said, when you go to the emergency room and they hand you a sales agreement, you might want to think twice about that interaction.
And that organization imports a record. They are the importer of the record. They are liable for that record. If they turn around and export it and it's false and they haven't verified that it's true, they are liable. So if you give them a record and it's a resident record and they don't verify that you're actually a resident under 19 U.S.C. 81O, that it's the only persons allowed to reside in the zone are federal, state, or municipal officials or agents. If they don't qualify that themselves and then export that record to somebody else, making that other person liable, they become liable for sanctions because they're the one that exported it to somebody else, now making them liable. This is
You understand where that's going? So even if there is a liability on their side, but you're the one that's entering it, they can eventually just say you're the one that entered it. Shouldn't you? Don't you think you should know this? Don't you think that if you want no tongue to prosper against you, that maybe you should follow that scripture and rise up and condemn any false judgments? Don't you think you should have told us before instead of now accusing us? So again, it's not a matter of making any accusations, and if there is, it's about accusing yourself and being self-critical. Again, you're the one that originally exported those data elements without knowing their value or what they inherently meant. Maybe you didn't understand the scriptures. Maybe they didn't teach you the scriptures, whoever it was. Somewhere along the line, though, again, it comes to the point that you're full-grown boys and girls now, and there comes a reason and logic that says there's got to be something else better. And if there is, what can I do about it?
Incoterms. This is Incoterms under implied and implied. Okay. Any person who violates any national security export control imposed under 4604 of Title 50 or any regulation, order, or license issued under that section may be subject to such controls of the importing of goods or technology into the United States as the President may prescribe. 18 U.S.C. 18 U.S.C. 8 and 18 U.S.C. 7. Special maritime and territorial jurisdiction over the obligations and other securities of the United States, including stamps and other representatives of values and canceled United States stamps.
And for 18 U.S.C. 9, United States vessels, now today known as negotiable instruments, stamps, and other representatives of value, being negotiable instruments.
The canceled United States stamp still has value. Why? Because it shows a fidelity bond with the Postal Service. Here we go. Here's the other one. Export and import of nuclear equipment and material. Why are we talking about nuclear equipment and material, folks? Because you are a nuclear plant. Your body has nucleuses all over the place, and it goes through nuclear exchanges all day long on a quantum micro level.
And I know that's far stretching, and I just want to get your mind to imagine things and see how things play. Because again, it goes to the term pollution as well. See, if you're spilling your sperm out there by masturbating and spilling your sperm without you're ejaculating without having sex, that's the definition of pollution in its etymological origins. So it's a matter of learning what the words literally could mean and how far you can stretch them. Again, it's a beautiful language. It's meant to be twisted and stretched like Stretch Armstrong, and let's see if it snaps back to its original place.
You are a nuclear energy station, nuclear energy plant. Again, 15 CFR and 50, nationality and trust. Let's go to 37, which is patent and trademark secrecy of certain inventions and licenses to export and file applications in foreign countries. I can't file applications in foreign countries because I hold my own secrecy. I pray in private. War and national defense current through, that's the same one. 752 is not found. So it goes back to the patent. And remember, folks, a patent doesn't need to be written down. When they use patent here, it's a false term. Patent is observable. So
Yeah, and I urge everybody to look that up. Look up the term latent, Latent, and then the term patent, Patent.
their confidentiality of patents and trademarks, they can only expose certain things. It is not completely observable. Patent is observable. It means it is. And there's no fiction about it. If it's on a piece of paper, the paper is patent. The words in it are not. Let's go down a little bit further, because I know there's a whole section here that had all kinds of 50 USCs. Okay, here we got a 50 USC 1702 as presidential authorities, and then when we click on the CFRs that it relates to, we've got a bunch of trust, and then the one on general enforcement for the customs, and then a bunch of 31s, which is money and finance, sale and issue of marketable book entry treasury bills, notes, and bonds. Again, it's an immoral birth certificate bonding.
It's martial law again, which chiefly affects the police and the collection of public revenue and taxes. The revenue is the revenue of private assets to public use.
Birth registration bonding.
Violation of the law.
Reporting procedures and penalties regulations. North Korea sanctions, and now we're going to get into all the sanctions. Iranian asset control regulations. Narcotics trafficking. Weapons of mass destruction. Zimbabwe sanctions. And they've got that whole list of sanctions of people that they've already dealt with. Okay. And there's the patent one again. And then we get into 715 CFR, which is the trust activities involving Schedule 2 chemicals. Enforcement. Let's look at that again. Enforcement under Commerce and Trade Regulations, Bureau of Industry and Security. Bureau of Industry and Security, obligations and other securities of the United States. Scope of the export administration regulations. This is not in regards to your exporting. They are the importer of your data elements. They are the importer of the record in that case. General prohibitions. 15 CFR Part 7. Bureau of Industry and Security, Department of Commerce. This is the Department of Commerce. Bureau of Vital Statistics.
You see how anything that has to do with that security is a commercial issue. Anything. That's that driver's license. That's a security device. It's a card used to obtain money, property, labor, or services on credit. Everything is a military commercial construct.
It's their security. Obligations and other securities are their statist mentality of keeping records known as statistics that are false. There's not one statistic on that record that can possibly be true. If that statistical record is
statist, I see. Isn't that how it's spelled?
Operating under a trust of nationality and it doesn't purport any beneficiaries. Where the fuck are all the beneficiaries under that trust? It's false. It's immoral. There's that 19 CFR 161 again, general.
See what I'm saying? If that's a United States business as a United States citizen conferred upon somebody as a gift, but yet it's a levy, taxpayer identification number, that's a levy, then how is it a gift? You see the inconsistency in the use of the language? That tells you that if it was conferred upon you in such capacity, particularly, again, when you're born, yet laying an obligation, that's not honorable at all. That's immoral.
enforcement provisions. 50 U.S.C. 1702 is the presidential authorities. 31 is the financial transactions. 50 U.S.C. 4610, not found. 15271, findings and purpose. The Congress finds and declares the following. The Congress here has to follow the Congress of the Postal Union. So I don't give a fuck what they write there. Let's keep going, because I know there's a whole section of a bunch of 50s. See what 4565 is. Authority to review certain mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers.
Boom. Right from the very beginning, enumeration at birth is such a certain merger, acquisition, takeover. In case you do not understand that, that's exactly what happened. And again, if you look at that code 50 U.S.C. 4601 through 4301 through 4305 or 4309, you'll see how all of that is related to licensing and commerce. And this here is a certain merger, acquisition, and takeover by that process, which is basically just trying to guarantee that you're not trading with an enemy. But instead of putting that as its main position, it placates that you are actually a contract officer taking on a liability. And that's the error.
The merger is presumed because you file everything as a resident. You give them a name and address instead of a number in lieu of the name and address, letting them know that you're the beneficiary and they need to send all bills to this name and this address. Social Security Administration, Baltimore, Maryland. 31 CFR 800-801 again. 21 CFR, that's employment. Maybe I went too far. Maybe that's it. Okay. Well, anyway, I guess that's it then. Just wanted to show you. I know it's a longer video, but I've done my research, and I'm done playing around with people asking questions that are already answered and can be answered very simply by your own research. I'm done answering questions. I'm not going to answer questions anymore. My page is closed. I've got a thing up there, and you really need to pay attention to that. It's going to be in the post below this video. I'm going to post this video, but I'll probably pull it because it comes down to language and that public education system and how you're entering your children into that system without paying attention to your own spirituality. And so I'm not going to answer questions from people that aren't in their spirituality. You want to come to me with a question? It better be a valid question, because I'm just going to ignore people that ask questions that are already open to the public. You already have your answer. All you got to do is punch that question into your search engine. Don't.
And so we come to the end of the stream. And that last little bit there, I still stand on. Again, you don't need to believe me. Don't believe the neighbor. Don't believe the government. And for crying out loud, don't believe your mother. It's time to learn how to do your research so you know. Quit being lazy. Quit thinking life is supposed to be fun and convenient and sweet and simple. It's only because we have these modern technologies that it is that it is. So, in the meantime, I'm out. And if you've got anything else to say, Iman, please do so. All right, and it looks like she's stepped away, so we are out, folks. You know me. God bless. You know I love you, but I don't give a rat's ass if you love me back. I don't care if you hate me. Don't care if you don't respect me. So may God bless you, and have a good night.